Team playoff squad until they went to A&M and got housed. Now they're trying to win the SEC against Georgia. SC took care of business against Notre Dame. Clemson had an ACC record 40-game winning streak snapped at home with a loss against South Carolina, who in 2 weeks have knocked 2 teams out of the playoffs.
Let's go watch party. Thank you for being here at the Voice of College Football. It looks like we just made it in under the wire. Thanks for being here again. Playoff rankings prior to championship weekend look like this. North Carolina State's at 25. They were unranked last week. Mississippi State at 24. North Carolina 23. UCF at 22, and Notre Dame has slipped 6 spots. Okay, I already have a bit of an issue because, again, you can't look at these in a vacuum. However, Notre Dame did play a pretty good ball game at the LA Coliseum against a most likely playoff-bound team, so I don't know that Notre Dame needs to drop by 6 spots. Isn't that what the number 15 team in the country is supposed to do when they're playing the number 5 team in the country on the road? Okay, Texas at 20. Texas, on the other hand, barely beat Baylor. Anyway, South Carolina at 19. Of course, they were unranked, and they burst into the top 25. According to the playoff committee, I had them already in the top 25. Tulane, they're the big wild card in all this, aren't they, in a certain sense? Not that they're going to make a break for the playoffs, but Tulane, just in regards to kind of being an oddball team that at this point is going to play in the New Year's Six, but it's going to come down to a UCF-Tulane championship game with UCLA at 17, Oregon at 16. They plummet 7 spots. And while we're awaiting the top 15 in the nation, we will leave the link in the chat so you can call. Oregon State at 15. They rise 6 spots. LSU drops 9. Okay. LSU drops 9 to 14. Florida State at 13. Okay. There's some consistency there. Of course, Florida State beat LSU. Okay. They're honoring the Florida State win, unless they just are spitting out the resumes and believe Florida State's better in totality with their resume. Washington at 12, Utah at 11. Utah beat Colorado when they go up by 3. Again, if that's all we're looking at, that seems a bit odd, but it's not in a vacuum. So I can't hold the committee to some kind of standard I don't hold myself to. So I will not jump on the committee without looking at the entirety of the rankings here. So I am leaving the link to join the show in the chat. There it is for all of you on 2, 4, 6, 8 different channels here at the Voice of College Football. Thanks for being here. Let's get to those top 10 in the country. Why don't we? And the big question for me is going to be how high or how low will Ohio State drop versus how high are Tennessee and most likely Alabama more than anyone, because for as much as I hate to admit it, this is kind of cleaning itself up, is it not? If USC and TCU win this weekend, then, we're going to be here on Sunday with all of you, but we're going to be here with all of you, and we're going to know who's made the playoff. I hate that. Clemson at 9. They lost to South Carolina, only dropped 1 spot. But we're going to need some chaos amongst TCU and USC in particular. Those are the two that need to give us some chaos. So Kansas State, Utah, step up. Christopher says Washington's better than Oregon, and Oregon is better than Utah. Okay. We will take your calls in just a second, unless this really starts to drag on. Penn State's at 8. They've gone up 3 spots after a win against Michigan State. 2 best losses in the country, right? Got to be, pretty much. Yeah. All right. You know what? I guess we'll just go ahead and start taking calls here because we might as well, because this is taking forever, as it always does. We appreciate you being here. And again, I have left the link in the chat. Let's go to DeAndre first. DeAndre, what's going on tonight?
Hey, I just wanted to see Florida State head of LSU.
There it is.
I've been pushing that one for a while. It just never made no sense to me. So, I was happy to see that. I think Clemson's at 12.
They're at 9.
9? Oh, wow, for real? I want to. They only dropped 1 spot after that loss?
That's it. It's
wild.
not about dropping. Again, DeAndre, it's not necessarily about just dropping and raising teams. It's about what everybody else did around them.
Right. I got you. Yeah, but we're going to see how the Carolina game come on. Is recruiting on this Saturday? This Thursday?
Is what this Thursday?
Sunday. Is it Thursday this week?
National Signing Day?
Yeah.
No, it's not until the next Wednesday. It's not until Wednesday, the middle of the week. We're 2 weeks away.
2 weeks away?
Yeah.
I'm going to get over the
Around
guys.
the 15th.
They want to do a live chat on recruiting day. See if they wanted to do a live.
We'll be here.
I'm talking about the Clemson channel, though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm going to ask.
If you guys want to do one.
Yeah, I'm going to ask them. Yeah, I'm about to ask you about somebody. Oh, going back to our Michigan conversation. It's like, and I'm going to let it go and let you go, but it's like Michigan, Texas A&M, and another school. I can't remember who I was thinking about. They always get credit for stuff that nobody ain't seen.
You had a bigger family?
Yeah.
Can you pull it out to the door for me?
Yeah, we always get credit for stuff that ain't nobody seen. When I say that, it's like, oh yeah, we so much love Michigan, and a lot of people grew up in that area of Michigan because of the motor areas that people move. But I'm like, y'all didn't even see these guys play. It's just like, well, I hear Cleveland Browns fans. I know you love the Browns. It's like, yeah, we got more championships than the Steelers. When? Like on 1946.
Yeah, but when do you draw that line? That's the problem, DeAndre. What's that magical year that you stop counting championships?
They win segregation and everybody was equal. That's when I was
okay. You brought up the NFL.
Yeah.
So the Cleveland Browns won NFL championships with black players.
Yeah, but also they played baseball teams too, right? The Boston, New York, the Brooklyn Dodgers, the New York Dons. So, I'm being funny. I don't know they were really baseball teams, but that was some of their names back then. So, but Mark, I ain't gonna hold everybody else up. You have a great night, all right?
Thanks, DeAndre. Appreciate you being here. All right, Alabama at 6, Ohio State at 5. There we've got USC at 4. Tennessee must have been at 7. And then now the only drama left is between Georgia and Michigan. And we will see. We might as well watch this with Mike. And Ben. Why don't we just make it a big Michigan fest? This is what I love. It gets no better for me than to be surrounded by Michigan fans.
Dream come true, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a dream come true. Just to watch, maybe with Michigan fans surrounding me, watching Michigan be ranked number 1 in the country.
Hope so.
Not quite.
I don't think it matters.
Number 2. It doesn't.
Yeah, at this point.
It does. It's going to matter. You don't think it's going to matter?
I think it will because I would rather play TCU than whoever drops in the 4.
Well, I'm just wondering if it. I don't know if the committee's not just going to match that up the way that they could easily flip flop this any way they want to get whatever matchup they want, because all they have to do is look at, if it's let's say if it's Purdue and Georgia do pretty much the same thing. They can keep, if Michigan's at first, and let's say Michigan beats Purdue 14 points and Georgia beats LSU 14 points. They can say easily LSU was the better team, so we're going to hop Georgia up, or
Sure.
they can keep Michigan right where they were, and they can flip-flop Michigan, and they can flip-flop TCU and USC. So I think they're just, I think there's going to be – I don't think it matters. They can make whatever matchup they want.
Well, they can do whatever they want, but to not catch the ire of all sorts of people that have half a brain that can kind of dissect and pick apart what they do, they at least need to be playing checkers or chess instead of checkers here, and be thinking ahead to say, okay, well, we can't put ourselves into a corner here, just like with Ohio State at 5 and Alabama at 6. To your point, I will say, Ben, that on the surface, it seems as though there's no way Alabama can pass Ohio State. Neither one's playing. How can they possibly pass them? Well, I guess if LSU plays a really good game or actually would win the SEC championship, they would say, well, Alabama's resume shot through the roof because LSU won this game.
I don't see that happening. That's a lot of transitive property.
I don't know.
I could see that happening.
No, it's not transitive property. They're evaluating resumes.
Yeah, I could see that happening. I mean, especially if they consider them real close.
Well, then you got the fact that, Ohio State beat a team that's currently ranked 8th, and their only loss was a team that's currently ranked 2nd. I would take that over 2 losses. Neither of those teams are in the top 10 right now. Tennessee's 11, and LSU's what, 15th?
Tennessee's 11? No.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry. Tennessee was like 7th. That's right.
Yeah, they're 7.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I was just fantasizing. Now, there's a couple things I noticed was kind of odd. Kansas State being in the top 10 kind of enforces what I thought is that TCU could still lose in the conference championship and still get in.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of people thinking that TCU loses, they're out. I don't think so. And I think this ranking proves that.
Seems like it.
And the other question I have, how in the world does Clemson lose at home to a previously unranked team and drop 1 spot?
Well, how far are they going to drop? How far would you drop them?
I would put at least one of those 2 Pac-12 teams that are right outside the top 10 above them. I think I'd put Washington above them.
With a worse record?
Yeah, I think I would. Because I think that this is the first time I get to see. I think the Pac is better than the ACC.
And you're dropping Clemson for losing to a pretty good South Carolina team, but Washington lost to Arizona State.
Yeah,
they're 3-9.
Okay, I get that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a close game, but I mean,
did you just give me close game?
Closer game, and it wasn't a stomping like they took from Notre Dame or like Clemson took. I mean, it was a closer scored game. I'm not saying close. I didn't even watch the game. I'm just looking at the score.
Well, Arizona had a win against a major Pac team and didn't drop them all that much.
Yeah, I'm good with Clemson being ranked ahead of the
I am too.
Teams. They got a better record. They played, I think, just as good at teams.
I was kind of disappointed about, I thought that we had a good shot at making one.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, the only argument I think Washington has probably better wins than Clemson.
Washington, they beat Oregon.
Oregon State.
Oregon State.
They beat Washington State.
Okay. They
had a close
They
game
beat Michigan
against
State.
UCLA. They beat Michigan State. That's true.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Well, I had to give some Big Ten love there.
Clemson beat Florida State. Clemson beat NC State.
Well, the thing is that
Clemson beat
Clemson
Wade.
beat
Those
Clemson beat
teams
a lot of these ACC teams that I think the committee thought was good early on, like your Syracuse and Wake and NC State. That probably their best win now is what, Florida State?
Yeah. So Florida State and NC State, to me, are just as good a wins as what Washington's got.
So I guess
Why
I
are they
don't
not?
I don't see NC State as being that great of a win.
Do you think who do you think's the best win on Clemson's record?
Florida State.
Got to be Florida State.
And you think that's better than Oregon?
I don't.
I think it's extremely comparable.
I think they're close. Yeah, I think they're close. And I think and I guess if you're looking at then, and yeah, I guess you could see that. No, I could agree with that. I mean, I don't think Oregon State is, I think, NC State would probably be ahead of Oregon State, right?
Clemson hasn't lost to a 3-9 team.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I guess if you're going by, I guess it's a question of, bad losses versus good wins, because I think that there are a number of teams that have better wins in Clemson, but might have a worse loss. Clemson's, I guess, it turns out that the South Carolina loss isn't terrible, especially what they did to Tennessee the previous week.
Yeah, South Carolina is kind of a wild card.
And I don't know, it's just kind of weird to kind of figure them into it, because this is the same team. Didn't Florida just like throw them a whipping?
South Carolina, yeah. The week before they whipped
like 38-6 or something.
Yep.
I mean, that's just odd.
Well, it's why you got to look at the whole resume and not try to play transitive property with one game.
Yeah, and you get in trouble doing that. But it just seems like Carolina is an average team that plays up for a couple specific games, but
or maybe they're getting better.
Well, I remember for a long time, the few South Carolina fans I knew, they were wanting Satterfield out.
Yes.
So, I mean, how good can they be if if your coordinator's, trying to get pushed out the door by your fan base?
Well, I don't think they're trying to push him out now. Although he just left to go to Nebraska to be Matt Rule's offensive coordinator.
Anyway. Oh, when did that happen?
Yesterday.
Oh man, I need to keep up.
So before this reveal, these final two of Georgia and Michigan, Mark, I wanted to ask you: do you still think that Ohio State has? Okay, what do you think Ohio State isn't as good as we thought, or do you think Michigan is better than we thought? What are your feelings on how those two teams are? I mean, you got to think Ohio State's offense is still great.
I think what Justin says right here, Ohio State sucks.
No, they don't suck.
You're heartbroken. That's all.
Yeah, I think it's more Michigan than Ohio State. I don't see that game quite as the way other people see it. I think Ohio State outplayed Michigan clearly for one half, and then I think for the first 3 or 4 drives of the second half, it was kind of a stalemate, and then Michigan took over and outplayed them, and then just kicked in the door. So there was this kind of transition of, and I don't know how to really weigh that all out. Michigan certainly did a much better job of taking the opportunities given, or taking the opportunities, versus Ohio State outplaying them and only being up by 3 points at halftime. Yeah, Ohio State's breakdowns are alarming. They had like 5 plays in that game that they just fell to pieces defensively. Otherwise, they win the game.
So this is the thing. I understand that analysis of it. I don't think the breakdown. I mean, I think those drives are still going to be drives, whether there was a huge play or not. Michigan may not have scored on every one of them if we didn't have the big plays. But I do look at Michigan keeping Ohio State to 3 points in the second half, and that is something big.
Oh yeah.
You know, I don't think those instant scores it may change the pace of the game and kept Ohio State in it if we didn't score as quickly as we did. But I don't know if it would have changed it could have been a closer game, but I wouldn't say that it would have given Ohio State the game at all. I mean, by any means. I think Michigan could have just went down and scored. And I think, you know, if they would have changed to be a little less aggressive against the run, then we may have just ran the ball 10 yards at a time instead of throwing 80.
No quorum.
Yeah, I completely agree.
But I think like my biggest takeaway from that game is they stopped Ohio State. They only allowed Ohio State 3 points in the second half. I don't know anybody have done. Has anybody done that this year? Even Iowa?
Well, the only reason Iowa got so many points in Iowa is because Iowa kept turning the ball over every couple minutes. I mean, if you give up 6 turnovers, they're going to score on you, even if they can't move the ball.
Yeah.
But the one thing that the telltale sign I had is for why until the Michigan game, Ohio State was number 1 in point differential. You can't be a bad team and be number 1 in the country in point differential. That means that, I mean, there are teams, if you have a great offense and a crap defense, your point differential is not going to be that good. If you have a great defense and a bad offense, your point differential is not going to be that great. But to lead the nation, it means that your offense has to be well above average and your defense has to be at least somewhat above average. And it wasn't like Ohio State played a crap schedule. They played Notre Dame. They played, a couple cupcakes like we all do. We had one more than they did this year. But for them, I mean, they were taking the other teams, ones that we were beating by, a couple touchdowns. Ohio State was just hammering them into the ground. They beat the hell out of Wisconsin. They beat the hell out. I mean, just Michigan State. I mean, they're just torching these teams that, and we beat them, 29-7 at home, a dominant win. But as far as, we did not, throw up all sorts of scores on them. Same with a lot of teams, we didn't beat Illinois by all that much either.
So Ben, I totally get your point, and it's a fair one that if Donovan Edwards doesn't run for 75 yards and a touchdown, where the Ohio State perspective could be we had a breakdown, one play, Michigan still could have had a 10-play drive for 75 yards instead. Absolutely. But I will say that second half, all credit to Michigan's defense. Michigan's defense was phenomenal in the second half. There were some conditions there. One being that there were 2 drives where Ohio State moved the ball into Michigan territory and had a 4th and fairly short, manageable situation and inexplicably punted. So they kind of gave 2 drives away where I would have loved to have seen them go for it. They're supposed to be supremely confident in their quarterback and receiver play to convert a 4th and 3 and a 4th and 5. Now, one of those 2, they had a fake punt called, which I don't agree with. They should have just had their best players on the field convert 4th and 3. You don't need to run a fake punt.
Is that the one? But is that fake punt the one they had the botch snap and then they took them back?
Yeah, the snapper snapped it the wrong way.
That was a 4th and 6, and then they botched it and took them to a 4th and 11, and then they just ended up punting. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm hearing that even on the 4th and 11, they were going to run a fake.
Oh, really?
So anyway, or whatever the down and distance was. So there's 2 drives. There's a 3rd drive where they get it down to the 6-yard line, and then C.J. Stroud tries to throw a Brett Favre, shovel pass that ricochets off. That was the ball game right there, because I think it was.
They weren't. No, they were. Michigan was, I think, 3 scores ahead at that point when he threw that interception.
No, they weren't 3 scores ahead because they scored.
They were at least 11. It was at least 11 points.
Yeah, well, 11 points is not 3 scores.
Yeah, it may have been 3 scores, but I was thinking it was 3 scores and not the 11. I think they were.
I think it was 11 points.
I
It
think
may
they
have
were
been
up 18
11.
later or something, 17 or
So,
18 later.
so they were at the 5 or 6 yard line, ready to make it a 1-score game, and that's when I knew the game was over. Well, and obviously the next play, the game was over because I think it was the next play that Edwards went 75 yards or 85 yards for a touchdown.
I actually thought that they were down. I thought they were down more when he threw that interception. I thought it was like 18 points or something. Are you sure that they were 11?
I think it was 11.
Because you think it was 11? I
It
think
was
I
either
think
it
it
was
was.
31-20 or it was 38-23 because the last Edwards touchdown made it the final score. What it
Either
was.
way, it's 2 scores.
I thought the game was almost out of reach when he threw that.
Not at the 5 yard line, down by 1 score.
When it was like that underarm pass to the and it like ricocheted off the guy's arm in the Michigan.
Yeah.
We got okay. I don't know. I have to rewatch it, but I'm pretty sure it was out of reach then. I think that was a desperation throw.
Well, Mark, is your standpoint that it was 4 down territory for those punts? Because it didn't look like the game was out of reach whenever they ordered a punt.
Because of the distance, it was 4 down territory.
I agree with Mark on one of those punts. It was like a 20-yard flip at most.
Oh, yeah, they kicked it into the end zone.
Yeah, it was like a 20-yard flip. I mean, that was bad execution by the special teams. They could have buried Michigan deep, but on the other side of it, they were also stopped at 4th and 2 once that game already. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that played into it or if it even should have, but Michigan did stop them once on 4th and 2.
And when Michigan drives it for 8 minutes plus, that takes a good chunk of a quarter.
The whole third quarter was Michigan just driving it down like that.
That was kind of the exception to the rule, though, because our scoring drives prior to that mostly were quick scores. It was almost like our offenses got switched because, like I said, we had 5 scores of 45 yards or more prior in the game, not prior in the season.
I got a question for you too, and be, of course, honest as you will be. Adrian says, Mark, your boys got dominated 2 years in a row. Do you guys consider that a dominant win?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
I don't know how you couldn't. Winning by 20.
Dominant, I think, has gotten extremely watered down in our culture. The word dominant, if you look up the word dominate or dominant.
Okay, this is the way I look at it.
They're almost even in total yardage. That's not a dominant performance to me.
Well,
that is a close game until 7 or 8 minutes left, and then Michigan completely outplayed them. I'm not arguing that in any way, but I don't personally consider that a dominant performance, and doesn't have anything to do with Ohio State. I would say the same thing and have about a million other games.
So I would say this. Hey, can we bring Michael on too? He wants to get in on this conversation.
Michael, and I need to know from Tony and Tim when you're ready to roll and need to come on. So
here, this is what I think in that question. I think dominating is a chance when you play a team and they have no chance of winning that game. Now, we've seen from one half, Ohio State and Michigan were close. Granted, Ohio State got the ball first in that half, so they were neck and neck. I mean, we kicked off to them. It was neck and neck. I think they had one more possession than we did. And then we took control in the second half. But if that second half would have went the way the first half was, then we would be looking at a different game. So I don't look at it as dominated myself.
Like, I don't have a huge issue if Mike or anybody else says it was a dominant performance. I get it. I just don't.
They beat us in one half of football.
Yeah, but I don't know. Usually
I think we dominated the second half, but I wouldn't call the whole game as a whole a domination.
I usually set the bar at 20. Usually I think wins of 20 or more.
I don't go by the scoreboard. I got to see the game.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's games where there are times where just things happen. It's football,
Well, I mean, there are, like I said, I think that, we dominated Iowa, even though that score, we only ended up winning by 13 points. I think it was 27-14.
Yeah.
But it was 20-0 after third. And, Harbaugh does the traditional ease up on the brakes, which, he would have done there. I mean, who really saw Donovan Edwards going to break a 75 and an 85 yarder? I mean, I wouldn't have even said that was going to happen with Corum, let alone Edwards.
I want to go look back and see what they were. And I mean, I'll watch probably later on this week, but I kind of want to see what their defense was when he ran both of those.
I've made the same comment, Ben, that I would love to see the all 22 film on those two runs, because he took it through the line. There wasn't a soul around.
Yeah, I'm so curious in how that happened, because they were playing kind of like, I mean, were they? I just want to know, were they playing the stop the run there, and they just overcommitted?
Well, I think there was 8 in the box on the 75-yard, and I think 9 in the box on the 85-yarder.
You know, for as much as I'm excusing Ohio State, and I'm only doing it because I think it's somewhat valid, I'll say the same thing on a Michigan drive. When Ohio State was trying to come back, it was still, I'm sure it was a 2-score game, and it was like it was only 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, and JJ ran a keeper around the end, and Ohio State threw him down for like a 1-yard gain, and I thought, Harbaugh, you did us a favor. You gave us a possession. You gave up on that down just thinking you can run out the clock. You know, when I thought he had all the confidence.
Are you talking about the end of the half?
No.
You're talking third quarter, right?
Third quarter? Okay.
Yeah, or fourth quarter, something in that range.
Okay, one thing, I see everybody giving CJ Stroud, saying he played bad.
He didn't.
And I don't think, I'll tell you, I don't know what you got. I mean, I haven't watched every Ohio State, but I've watched a lot. And CJ was throwing some lasers. I mean, there was an out pass where he couldn't have put the ball. I mean, we had Mike Singletary, Mike Singletary, not Mike Sanderstill. Mike Sanderstill, right. I think it was your tight end. Mike Sanderstill was right there, and there was like a foot. I mean, he put the ball the only place he could put that ball. It was like throwing 30-yard pass into a hole the size of a footballer fit.
Are you talking about
anywhere farther, it would have been out of reach. Anywhere closer would have been in the hands of the receiver.
I assume you're talking about that tip on Stover in the end zone.
No, not talking about that. I'm talking about it was an out route.
No. Well, I can't see anybody that said Stroud played bad. Well, who played bad was his receivers screwed it up for him.
There was a couple. I was saying there were unprecedented drops by Ohio State receivers.
Buka dropped a couple. Harrison dropped 1 or 2.
Yeah,
one was dropped behind the line of scrimmage, and I don't know if he would have went anywhere with it. And maybe it was better that he dropped because there was some Michigan defenders coming. And they may have lost yards, but it was unprecedented. I think it was Buka that dropped it. Or no, it was Harrison that dropped it.
Well, yeah, Harrison had a drop on a slant that was huge because it was still a 1-score game, and it was like 3rd and 5, and it was a first down at midfield. The receiver core, they didn't play bad for another receiver core.
Yeah,
but they're supposed to be the best, and they weren't the best. They were good. They still, the 3 drops in a game, and I don't know what the final total was, is not horrible. But actually, Ben, I would say Stroud didn't play bad, but he didn't play. I don't know if he played a 5 on a scale of 1 to 10. I don't know that he played his average game. He missed more throws than he usually does.
One thing I thought about Stroud is that I thought there was a few times he could have ran.
Yeah. Oh, there was a number of times he could have ran.
That's always.
But that's him. That was one of the knocks I had on Stroud, is that he's scared. He does not want to get hit, and he shows it every time he plays.
But I mean, honestly, I think Stroud could be a really, really good NFL quarterback. And I mean, I have not seen many guys as consistently as accurate as he is.
Well, he's a great one, but he needs to go to the Wizard of Oz and ask him for a heart, because other than that, he's a great quarterback. You can take that out.
Wow.
Well, look at him. I mean, I saw it during the Iowa game. Whenever I think it was Logan Lee. It was either Logan Lee or Jack Campbell came barreling down on him, and he just flat out dropped the ball. He just didn't want to get hit so bad. It was, I mean, if you want to call it a strip sack, but he just dropped the ball, saying, "Here, take it in for a scoop and score." And that was when I saw
pass. He was throwing a shovel pass.
One thing I was happy to see that game, though, was I thought it was awesome that one of the JJ's runs, he puts his head down, and bowls through
The touchdown run?
No, it wasn't a touchdown, bro. He puts his head down, and it was a first down.
Yeah.
And then he bowls to get the first down. He puts his head down and bowls through 2 Ohio State defensive backs. And then he kept going. He kind of ran out of bounds.
Oh, yeah.
He was even expecting this to still be up. And he went out of bounds, and he was still up on his feet after going through those 2 guys. I was like, oh, my goodness.
My favorite run from him was the touchdown run where
that was cool,
he basically met like 3 Ohio State defenders right at
where he passed his blocker and just went for it. Yeah, that was good.
I mean, that's just pure desire right there. You can't coach that. Okay, well, I'm going to drop out and let you get some more.
Yeah, I'll let you get somebody else in here, too. It was nice talking with you, Mark.
Appreciate it,
Catch you
man.
later.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks a lot, guys.
All right, we will keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. We are waiting Tony, Tim, and Rick here at some point to go over the Patreon poll and what you all had to say regarding your rankings. Let's go to Sports Talk 101. Hello.
Hey, Mike. Mark. How you doing?
How you doing?
I'm doing good. In terms of the rankings, I think Penn State being ranked number 8 does help Ohio State in a bit, putting them in 5th spot if they were to move up into the into 4th spot. If USC were to lose on Saturday, I think I agree with top 25. I think top 25 is good. I thought Clemson maybe 10 or 11th, given the loss they had to South Carolina. But I agree. I think they deserve to be at Clemson deserve to be at 9. I think that's a good. I mean, now now ranked. I guess now Clemson now has 2 ranked losses. I guess now, which is helpful. But that's my take on the rankings. And I'm gonna chime in. You guys earlier talked about Ohio State and the Michigan game, and just talked about the run game. How LA had like 209, I think, rushing yards and like total, and then 79 rushing yards. And I think that game was really close in the first quarter, at least in the first half. And then all of a sudden, Michigan came back and took over. I just felt like Ohio State just didn't attempt to try to came back. In fact, Michigan holding 3 points. After that, I think last 4 minutes of the game, I just felt Ohio State just sort of gave up at that point in the game. Like the last 4 or 5, 7 minutes, I think Ohio State just like, I think Ohio State probably gave up in the last 7 minutes of the 4th quarter.
Well, hopefully they didn't give up in the last 7 minutes, because at the 7-minute mark, they certainly still had a chance to win. But then I don't remember exactly the time left in the game, but Michigan scored that last touchdown with maybe 5 minutes left. And then, it wasn't going to happen after that once it got to 3 scores. But, I'm not going to question Ohio State's. I'm not going to question in any way their effort. I didn't see a lack of effort. And if there is a lack of effort, then you might as well forget it and shut down the program and not even, step on the field if you can't get ready for that game. More people watch that game, I understand, than the World Series, the NBA Finals, and the Stanley Cup Finals. That's crazy to think about. So anyway, the motivation should be there. So it wasn't so much lack of effort or giving up, as it's just mindset, mentality. I think their confidence took a big hit, and Michigan had supreme confidence.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. I'm gonna answer this super sad question. It says, Mamba 24 says, do you think Michigan can keep up the passing game? They could make a run at national championship. I mean, if they were to go to national championship, I think, they have. It's the only way to beat whoever we face, especially maybe most likely Georgia, a national championship game. No one get the run game, but also the great way we play our house is like half. J.J. McCarthy has to throw those deep balls and get those 89, 60 yards, 40 yard, passes to score and to win those games. And I think Michigan needs to keep. I agree. Yes, I think Michigan should keep up the passing game if they were to make the run at national championship. They just need to keep passing the ball. I mean, they got a great run game, but they need to stop passing the ball if they want to beat a team like Georgia in the national championship game.
Well, I don't think there's any question that Michigan needs to throw the ball to be able to win a national championship. So, Mamba24, we appreciate your super chat. I'm taking a guess as to who your favorite athlete of all time is. So you can look at this two different ways. Will Michigan keep up the passing game to make a run at the national championship, or do they have to? Well, yes, they have to. There's nobody in this day and age that can run the ball to a national championship, run the ball exclusively. They've got to be proficient and big play explosive in the passing game. I'd say against Ohio State, they weren't really even that efficient throwing the ball downfield. They were explosive throwing the ball downfield, but they need to be even more consistent than that, most likely against Georgia, to beat Georgia.
I think that's, yeah. They don't want to beat Georgia. Nobody can run the ball against Georgia. I think Michigan don't like to beat Georgia a combination of the run game and what they did with a couple of touchdown passes. I think that's a couple of combinations of both I think Michigan needs to do if they were to face Georgia in the national championship game. And that's what Michigan needs to do. And they need to be consistent in the passing game, which they can. So they can easily work on between the Big Ten championship and that New Year's, between that and the playoff game, and then obviously between now and then national championship. And that's time to, I guess, after the Big Ten championship game, to work on that passing game. I think there's enough time to work on the passing game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another question. I know Michigan former quarterback Cade McNamara entered the draft as well. The thoughts on that and maybe where he go. I think some people saying he should go to Iowa. I'm not certain, but I think
well, yeah. Iowa seems to be a popular destination because of their obvious issues. And they had one of their quarterbacks, Spencer Petras, is bye-bye. And Alex Padilla announced in the last couple of days he's gone. And not that Cade McNamara couldn't beat either one of them out for the job with his arm tied behind his back. So Cade McNamara would be a huge upgrade at Iowa. He's a plug-and-play guy, a veteran, a leader. Limited to a certain extent from a dynamic standpoint, but a strong enough arm and a mobile quarterback. Again, not dynamic in anything that he does, but just makes the right decisions. He's leader. He's tough. Yeah, that would be a significant upgrade to Iowa football. All right, Sports Talk. Appreciate you being here.
I think Pammy.
Have a good night. Thanks. All right, Exploring with Ben and Sam. Thanks for being here. We appreciate you exploring with Ben. Ben does the post game on the Oregon channel, and of course joins us on the Sunday night show, College Football After Dark, as do Tony, Tim, Rick. They host our USC post game at the Voice of College Football and do a remarkable job. Don't pay too much attention to all the graphics and the fancy artwork by Tony, because then you'll be sorely disappointed when you watch the rest of my shows here. But they do a phenomenal job, and the USC channel is growing, much to their credit, and we appreciate their contribution. And of course, Wednesday night is the Pac-12 chat show. We got Tony, Tim, we got Rick here as well. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
Doing fantastic, Mark. Thanks for having us on.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. And here we go. Let me.
And we figure the growth has more to do with Lincoln Riley than us, but we'll take it.
Yeah, we can give him a little bit of credit.
Yeah, he and Caleb Williams get the credit, I think, for folks wanting to watch. But hey, we've got another update of everybody. Folks turned in their ballots from your Patreon community to give us our updated 12-pack Patreon playoff prediction poll. The Vox Populi, Vox Day. So we are, once again, the voice of the people speaks. And it's a lot of similarities, but also some differences this week from the playoff committee, particularly as we get back towards the end of the 12. And I think that is going to say a lot about, we probably will see some virulent arguments during the new playoff system from people who are grumpy about not being number 11 or whatever. But it certainly gave us some really, really, I thought, some really interesting matchups that look just absolutely awesome and fun. So I got, once again, for everybody who doesn't know, Mark's Patreon community, everyone who's in it is welcome to vote. and they send in ballots every week. And we have folks that are from the ACC, the Big 10, the Big 12, the Pac-12, and the SEC, as well as independents. So we've got folks that represent every conference. And as I look at them, I look for things that are like ridiculous. I try to make sure nobody's gaming the system or anything like that. And it's interesting to see because there are teams that people are high on and teams that they're not high on, and it's not always the ones you think. I think a lot like with the AP voters, people are cognizant of their own intrinsic beliefs, and so they sometimes like overcompensate. Like I had some SEC teams ranked higher than most people, which is kind of interesting because I think they're good teams. But so without further ado, Mark, here's how, if the playoffs started today with the expansion, how your community would have voted folks in. So what was really interesting is this is the first time that seeds 1 through 4 have actually been seeds 1 through 4. So Georgia, Michigan, TCU, USC. So in this case, because remember, guys, that the top 4 seeds go to the top 4 conference champions. So this is the first time there's actually been a sync up, and the 5th seed is not a higher ranked person who got demoted for not being a conference champion. Number 5 was, of course, the Ohio State Buckeyes hosting a game in Columbus. Number 6, Alabama will host a game in Tuscaloosa. Number 7, Washington will host a game in Seattle. So get your boats ready for some sailgating. The first time we've seen the Dogs hosting a game in this pool. And number 8, Penn State hosting a game in State College. So those are 8 pretty great settings for some football games. All right.
Where's Tennessee?
We're getting to there. The next one up to bat, number 9 was Utah playing Penn State in State College with the winner off to play Georgia. So I mean, that's a pretty good game. Number 10 was Clemson. Now this bracket, I love this little Orange Bowl bracket going on here of Washington, Clemson, and the winner going to play Michigan in Miami. That's really fun. Then Kansas State playing Alabama with the winner going to play TCU. Now, because the 12th spot goes to a 6th conference champion, because we only have 5 conference champions up here so far, the first 2 teams out are Tennessee and Florida State. Mark, your voters do not share your belief in Tennessee, just as they didn't share your belief in LSU. And LSU is, do you see them, Tim?
Hold on.
Looking. I do not see LSU.
I do not see them.
Okay. I guess maybe they weren't the 5th best team in the country. Your voters, Mark, were right. Vox Populi, Vox Dei, your voters made the call. Made me a little proud when I saw that. And then Tulane comes in from the AAC at 12. So these are some fun games. What do you guys think?
I like that Clemson at Seattle because it takes a typically regional team and takes them to the other side of the country in a game that they would never, ever schedule. And this is what the 12-team playoff is going to give you. In fact, Clemson, and not knocking on Clemson, I'm just giving you a little history here because that's what LBC does. I give you the truth. And if you want to go ahead and cry about it and change and use your own verbatim and your own language to make you feel better, then that's okay. But Dabo Swinney has made this team legitimate, and they haven't been so much nationally. If you are a top-ranked all-time team, they've never played, they've never played Michigan, they've never played Texas, they've never played Washington, nor Iowa, nor Wisconsin, Arkansas, a lot of UCLA. There's a lot of national top 25 all-time teams they've never played. So this is a benefit of the college football playoff, is getting a matchup such as that.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. You guys want to take a look at the how they look compared to the playoff committees?
Yes.
All right. So first of all, this was the conference breakdown. You had 3 Big Ten, 2 SEC, 3 Pac-12, 2 Big 12, and then 1 each ACC and AAC. So the nice thing about this is, these are voted on by quality of the teams and their wins, but you're getting at the same time good representation across the country, which I thought was pretty nice. So like this would have a lot of TV appeal, which is pretty cool. And then, so a lot of these positions were exactly the same as what the committee did. So number 1, Georgia, number 2, Michigan, number 3, TCU, number 4, USC, number 5, Ohio State, number 6, Alabama, and number 8, Penn State. All everybody matched the committee on those. Got a little bit interesting, like you said, kind of at the bottom, because your voters put UW at 7, and the committee put Tennessee at 7. I think Mark, your voters. Tennessee had such an ugly loss, and I think that my guess would be, and just because people message little things, just hearing from a couple people, I think they figure with Hendon Hooker gone that they don't think Tennessee is the same Tennessee that they were earlier in the season. So people can argue whether they like that or not. They can go cry in a pillow, whatever they want, but that's what your voters thought. Then we had Utah and Clemson, Clemson and Kansas State, Kansas State and Utah. So these 3 were just like a slight shuffle, but pretty close. And then at 12, you had the clicking on the wrong thing. At 12, you had the flip of the Tennessee-Washington. So Tennessee was in the top 12. I'm sorry, go ahead.
You just froze up there for a second, so I thought
sorry.
I may need to take over there. So Tennessee at number 12, but of course, do not make the playoff because of the format.
I actually had Tennessee at number 6 in my rankings.
Wow.
Because of their wins.
I think I had him at like 9.
And that's where, not only do you hear the opinions on your show, Mark, the voice of college football, and thank you for your voice and your platform, but we hear it from the playoff committee. There always has been a difference between quality wins and who's had the best losses, quote unquote. And this has been an age-on argument that's been going on since the BCS era. And everybody gets their narrative now on social media, whether it be Twitter or other platforms, to align their allies to support their viewpoint. But I had Tennessee at 6, and it was kind of ironic because you would think somebody like me who listened, who's on this other side of the country from SEC land and listened to Boo basically preach last week that, we're not really sold on USC's defense. Okay. Which is fine. That's their opinion. He was just representing what other people in the room had stated. And then to see Tennessee go out and give it up like that, and the committee only dropped them to 7, we're just speaking out both sides of our mouth. Let's be consistent. But that's where the bias is. There's bias. And just like they have bias, our voters have their own particular bias. But the great thing about the 12-team playoff is it is going to be an answer, if there ever is going to be an answer, to making the most equitable, fair playoff bracket. Because before, you only had the BCS and they took the top 2 teams. Now we have a 14 playoff, but you have 5 power conferences. And let's forget the little redhead stepchild, the group of 5. Like you're already playing for nothing when the season starts, but you're playing the game, which is unfortunate. This allows the opportunity to actually win your conference and get a seat at the table, okay, for the 6 highest rated conferences, which means the best G5 conference champion is at least going to get an opportunity. So if you have a once in a generation, every 30 or 40 years, where you have a great undefeated season, then you can come to this moment where everybody's going to go ahead and poke holes in your schedule and you're going to get pushed out the door. So this allows those bad losses, like what happened to Ohio State at Michigan. It allows for whatever opportunities there's there. It balances the differences in a conference plays 9 conference games, another conference plays 8, another conference plays a week out of conference schedule. There's all these inequalities This actually allows for those inequalities between each conference because they're never going to agree to do the same thing. At least allows for that and puts them into a playoff. So we don't have to have these stupid arguments. But we'll have another stupid argument when this happens because there'll be complaints about, team 13, 14, and 15.
Yeah, but I did think that it was interesting to notice. I mean, the teams on here actually match. I think this is the first time that going all 1 through 12 that we've had all 12 match both your community voting and the playoff committee. So there's some debate. Tennessee and Washington are the two extremes. You got the 3 there and 9 to 11 that are slightly shuffled, but overall, as far as who is the top 12, your community voted pretty well in line with the committee.
The big difference is, and I'm I think along with the community more than you guys who had Tennessee hired me. There's one glaring thing I'm not sure if you guys are taking into factor. Tennessee doesn't have Hendon Hooker anymore.
Yeah,
and they won't have him going forward. So I just can't rightfully see putting a Tennessee team without. I mean, there's a reason why he was a Heisman. That guy made that offense insane. I'm sure they're still a good team, but are they really a top 7 team in the country without Hendon Hooker? I don't see it. Well, we'll find out in the bowl game. But that seems really extremely high. If USC lost Caleb Williams, if Ohio State lost CJ, are we really putting them as high as they are? When you lose the heart and soul, because you can't play big time college football without a big time quarterback. And Tennessee had that. And that was a huge part of Heupel's turnaround there. And without that piece, I just don't. I mean, I thought they were high to begin with, but without him, I just can't see him at 7, 8, 9, 10. I just don't see it.
That's a fair argument. That's a fair opinion.
And that's one of the interesting things that I think we're going to see more debates about. Again, particularly as we get higher up, is their sort of interesting case because they lost a player so instrumental, and it becomes a question of, okay, are they going into the playoffs because we think they were the best we think they were among the best in week 4, or we think they're among the best now?
Yeah, I
mean,
and
that's always a hard debate.
If you look at those top teams, let's just look at the top 7 teams. Besides Michigan, if they lost their starting quarterback, think about how those teams would be compared to where they are right now.
And what's unfortunate about Tennessee's situation, or any team that would lose a player that magnitude, especially the quarterback at this late stage of the season, there's no room or opportunity to show that they can be just as good. Like if he's lost in week 7, okay, you've got, let's say, 3 more tough opponents, and you can prove that you're not just Hendon Hooker, that you are worthy of being ranked that high. But he was lost with 1 game left in the season. They go out and destroy Vandy, which doesn't mean much. And, we don't know.
And that's a great point, Mark. And I think that's why this 12-team playoff is beneficial for that type of situation, because it's unfortunate. Hendon Hooker's a great quarterback, but they're not going to make the top 4 this year.
But then again, I mean, the counter argument to that, of course, is, USC lost Travis Dye and did just fine. And Michigan lost Blake Corum. And so you can argue that that's when a guy steps up. So, you hate to really penalize them because it's not just based on what we think going forward. But I think the issue with Tennessee is that we saw they lost Hooker and they got boat raced.
Well, quarterbacks
by a much weaker opponent.
Quarterback's a totally different, with all due respect, it's a different situation than a running back or a wide receiver.
It is.
And also losing a quarterback mid-game, they had a week. And again, it is Vanderbilt. But when you have a week to prepare the backup is the backup, but he's not getting those first team reps right all year. So it does take time to get him. That's why I'm thinking if you lose your top quarterback this late in the season, again, we're looking at those teams. I mean, people can make fun of Stetson Bennett, but Stetson Bennett's having a good season. And I'm not sure if that offense would run even close to what it's doing at Georgia without him at the helm. So, I mean, you look at those teams, you lose something like that, you're going to, I believe, this late in the year, you're going to drop pretty far your production.
I think we are going to see more arguing the 10, 11, 12, 13, as we do get to the new playoffs, the 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 are going to argue about who's worthy of being in the playoff. And that'll get really annoying. But I think that the good thing is that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are not really in debate as to whether they get to go to the playoffs. And that is just, I think, an infinitely better system than we have now. We can show you again, look at the matchups again. I just can't get over, like, these are just, I want to watch every one of these games. So we'll see. But again, of course, the one thing is, I imagine that if TCU or Kansas State lose, we'll probably see some shifting, so they probably wouldn't play each other again. But that's the only one in here that just the seedings, came out to show a little bit of awkwardness. And I don't know, maybe there will be a thing in the playoffs where they can switch 11 and 12 or 11 and 10 or something like that. I don't, because they haven't written the actual rules or something, but I think it would be nice if they did something like that to avoid, kind of mixing up rematches, because theoretically that would be their third game of the year against each other.
That's a good point, Tony. And maybe they will have some type of language where they won't allow that to happen, because that's, that's an unfair advantage to a team having to play 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, exactly. And that's an easy flip from 11 to 12, or an easy flip from 10 to 11 with Kansas State, and you'd be all set.
And the other thing too is that you look at out of conference scheduling. How will that be? What will be the decision making of teams when the 12-team playoff? Do they go for a manageable out of conference schedule to get them to have the best record? That might be one way of thinking, but you get to the playoff and then you're going to have to play real football. Does that out? Did your out of conference schedule actually prepare you to play good teams? Or are you going to wake up and get punched in the mouth when you actually have to play an outstanding team, maybe on the road?
Well, and
not
and
in
you
a
got,
bowl
sorry, go
setting,
ahead.
not in a neutral bowl setting. So you might be playing in state college like Utah here, right? So that would be an interesting dynamic, because Penn State is dynamic at home. They're going to have, can you imagine having the whiteout and having Utah having to travel to state college? We saw what they did when they went to the Swamp. We saw what they did when they went to Autzen. We saw what they did when they went to the Rose Bowl. They're a different team. Their fans like to talk smack on Twitter. They feel disrespected, talking all this crap on USC. Get real, Utah. You're not in the WAC or Mountain West anymore. Step it on up. This is big boy football. That's what I love. It's okay.
Well,
it's okay to be champs of Utah, but go win some big games outside of your little state.
I'll tell you guys another thing I thought was here that is creeping on up. Was we started to see Florida State creep on up.
Yeah. Mark, could you
they're only one out.
Mark, can you tell that there's a rematch 3 nights away in Las Vegas? Can you tell I'm getting a little jacked, Mark?
Oh, I can sense it. It's there. Oh, I know it.
Subtle. We love it.
Rick,
I'm jealous you're going to be there.
Not that swag, that vibe's not always there with you, but yeah, it's been ratcheted up a little bit.
I wanted Oregon. And I said that on the Voice of College Football Pac-12 live chat show last week, that I wanted Oregon, but they overlooked the little brother. There was I think there's a few fans in the chat that wanted to slap USC. I say, hey, you got to take care of little brother.
Yep.
You get the opportunity to slap us. And they went into the abyss of Corvallis. And I had predicted on the show Oregon State would win by 3. What happened? I don't know how it happened, but it happened. So Oregon, you had your chance. It didn't happen. And now we get Utah. And that's just as good.
Mark, are there any of these that you think would be just an absolute like boat racing?
Well, Ohio State Tulane has that look about it, obviously, for obvious reasons there. Alabama, Kansas State, I tend to think could be a little ugly, but maybe not. Maybe not. I'm not saying that for sure, but it's got the potential. I think Washington's a bad matchup for Clemson. I really like what Washington would do in that Clemson matchup with the way they're struggling on offense, and Michael Penix spinning the ball. I think would be a good matchup for Washington to take care of Clemson right there. And I think the best game of the first round is Penn State and Utah.
Yeah, I don't think that
that's gonna be
Clemson
a good
secondary
one.
would want to see Penix throwing the ball. That's probably for sure.
Penix is having one heck of a year. That guy is amazing.
I will say, to your earlier point in particular, Tony, talking about, and Rick, you guys were kicking around out of conference scheduling and the different strategies by various teams. And that's going to be up to the selection committee to prove that they're going to honor and recognize and reward those teams that go out and play legitimate non-conference opponents. Because I ran this for at least the playoff era, 2014. I think I even took it back before that. And, obviously there was no college football playoff committee, but just took the AP poll and slotted the teams with the group of 5 champion and the whole deal, and formatted it. And you've got almost every year, you've got a pack of teams that are pretty much clogged up at 9-3, that like 2 are going to make it, 2 or 3 are going to make it, and like 4 aren't. And they're all coming from major conferences.
And they're going to flip out.
In the whole deal. And it's going to be, okay, are we going to reward strong out of conference scheduling then? Because otherwise, yeah, to Rick's point, if you're just going to let the team with the best record in that scheduled 3 flyweights in the non-conference, well, then what's the point of scheduling a difficult non-conference game? And traveling.
Yeah. Well, and so one of the things that's kind of bothered me, there's been lots of talk among Utah fans on Twitter this week about why didn't we just play BYU instead of Florida, because we would have spanked them.
Yeah.
And I don't like that debate, because I like that they played Florida. And I think that they should say, hey, you know what we should have done? We should have not thrown an interception at the end when we were trying to win the game, rather than like we should have played a weaker team. Because I don't like that. Michigan, I think I actually gave Michigan my number 1 vote this week because they're so good. But like I don't mind the people raising heck because they say Michigan's out of conference schedule was brutal. Now that's independent from the fact that Michigan is an amazing team this year, and they probably would have waxed UCLA like 42-14 if they'd played them in week 2. Before UCLA really got their act together. I mean, so we're not questioning Michigan because they're awesome. And again, I gave them my number 1, but there should be, I think, something that lets you lets you actually quantify the fact that like there needs to be like a cost of trying to scam the system by playing, every convent and nunnery in November.
Well, that's the one really big advantage. That's another big bonus to proponents who want automatic qualifiers for the conference champion, where you have a path to victory, because then you do go and schedule, let's say Alabama before you do go schedule LSU, Ohio State. Well, actually USC already does all that shit, but other people that don't do that kind of stuff, it gives them a reason that you can go ahead and take that risk, because then all you have to do is win your conference and you're going to be in the playoffs. The problem is a lot of people are hiding behind easy non-cons because they are using the system. And that's why we see these horrible matchups all year long during the regular season. Whereas if we had a way for a team to know, hey, listen, if I just win my conference I'm in, they're going to take those risks that a lot of teams don't take.
Well, it's human nature to avoid change, or to drag your feet and make change, or complain about change and do nothing. but there has to be specific rules. And I'll give you an example. If you're a group of 5 team, let's say you're Fresno State. In the past, they have the mentality where they'll want to play anybody anywhere. Okay. And they played USC this year. They played Oregon State this year. And they're 8-4. And so they went out and played Power 5 teams because they want to get better, and they're in the Mountain West championship game. So kudos to them. But if you're like a Power 5 school, you should not be playing an FCS school in this 12 era. And you know what? There'll be the excuses. Well, we're going to help out the little guy. Blah, blah. There should be some type of rule that you cannot play more than, one every 4 years or whatever. Put some clause, right?
Well, and here's the thing: if the SEC wants to help the FCS teams, there's a really cool new tool they can use to do that. It's called a checkbook.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to give them money,
right?
You want to fund their programs, then give them money. But they don't have to be on your schedule.
And I'm going to give you an example, not to pick on Clemson again, but I've been doing my research. And I don't know what the reason is, but Clemson has played 135 games in their complete lifetime against FCS powers Furman, Presbyterian, and the Citadel. They've won 108 out of 135 games.
Surprised they lost so many.
That's an 80% win clip. If you go ahead and you check the numbers, okay, they have 778 all-time wins before this year. That's 13.9%. Round it to 14%. So 14%, Clemson, of your all-time wins is against just 3 FCS schools. That's ridiculous.
Wow.
I'm sorry. Schools like SC, yes, I'm going to be arrogant. We've never, ever played an FCS school. None of our wins are against an FCS school. So you can make any excuses you want to. Hey, we got to play South Carolina. We got to play this team, and it's tough, and yada, yada, yada. No. There's got to be, and there has to be specific rules, because if you're going to play big boy football and you're going to go ahead and schedule these patsies so you can get into the playoff, it shouldn't happen. You've got to make some changes.
Well, that's historically. I would say that Clemson's done a pretty good job in the last 10 plus years, because for one thing, the Notre Dame contract with the ACC has forced ACC teams to play. When Notre Dame's playing 5 and 6 games against the ACC, obviously they make their way around the league pretty quickly within a couple of years. So Clemson played them in 15, 18, 20, 22. Forget if they played them last year. They must not have played them last year. Anyway, so with that Notre Dame situation agreement there with the ACC, that's forced them to chew up one difficult non-conference game there. Then they always play South Carolina, and South Carolina sometimes can be really good, like they were under Steve Spurrier for a long time, or they can be lousy. That's a wild card.
Well, and I give them credit for that. Same thing with Georgia and Georgia Tech. But also same thing with USC Notre Dame. There's a bunch of teams that do that. And
USC.
And the hard thing is teams who don't.
Yeah, USC doesn't say we play Notre Dame already, so we don't need to schedule anyone else. No, they go out there and they schedule Alabama, they schedule BYU, they schedule all sorts of different teams. And even when it wasn't a Notre Dame year for Clemson, they've gone home and home with Auburn and with Texas A&M in the last 5 or 6 years.
Well, next couple of years, USC has Ole Miss and LSU in addition to Notre Dame every year. And
the risk we take by playing that schedule is we get some committee that nitpicks our defense, about questions about our defense, but doesn't talk about our offense.
Well, I would say the one exception I would give, and tell me, I don't know what you guys think about this in the chat, is for a lot of historical reasons and also kind of just the significance of it, the one FCS games I don't mind are when we play HBCUs. Now, USC has not done that. Notre Dame's doing it next year. UCLA did it this year. I think that there's some important societal benefits
and some great fans
of including those.
Exactly.
But Furman, that doesn't need to happen. Austin P. So
What state is Austin P
Sorry,
in? Does
Gumby.
anyone know on the panel? Where's
They are
Austin
the
P?
governors from Tennessee. The governors from Tennessee. I've been doing my Austin P research.
OBC knows.
Proud of you. That's good.
So, but look, I think it's a good thing. And like I said, I was really impressed by the fact that the voters were pretty clear and aligned with the committee fairly well. So good job, Voice College Football community. You guys, I guess, think like the committee.
Yeah, it's pretty lined up.
Nice.
And you guys should join the Patreon if you're not already in there, and you can vote yourself. If you don't like the votes, you can vote yourself. You don't have to complain. You can actually change it.
It's expensive, guys. It's a full $5 a month. You want to break that down. It's probably what some of you guys a Big Mac meal or whatever they're called. I mean, so it's not very much money. I've never met anybody that's joined that's left, to my knowledge. We have a great time and everybody's welcome. I know we get a lot of crap because we're 3 USC guys, but the people voting on this come from all conferences. The conversations we have, it's great because we actually have Trojans and our best friends are Ducks and an Irish and Alabama. And it's just really a great community. If you love college football, if you like talking some smack, but also at the end of the day, just being around people that love and know college football, it's a great place to be on Saturday and pretty much 24/7 throughout the week.
Very cool. I just
Cool.
left the link in the chat.
Thanks, Mark.
Well, thank you, Mark. This already take up so much time, guys. But thank you to a lot of you guys in the chat are voters, and we appreciate you guys joining every week.
Tony, Tim, Rick, thank you so much. This is amazing. I look forward to seeing the breakdown each and every week, and it continues to get us toward conference championship games, and we'll see how it all winds up in regards to the one that really counts, both from the committee and then how the voters line up on Patreon this coming next Tuesday.
It'll be fun.
Right on, beat the Utes.
See you guys.
Thanks, you guys. Appreciate you being here. All right, let me take this super chat that just came in from Ben. Ben, appreciate you being here as always. I paid as much for this super chat and then for a month of Mark's Patreon. Well put and well outlined there, Ben, for everyone as a example right there. Ben, thank you so much for doing that. We will go to Michael. Michael's on the line. We appreciate you being here, Michael.
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing well. What's going on?
Not much. I kind of hoping we could have got in. I could have got in there with both Mike and Ben earlier, but I understand they had to do this streaming stuff. So, but I wonder why Darius wanted to join the call with me.
Oh,
or is he wanted to join it? Or was he wanted to join it with Tony and them?
Well, we can do this. We'll bring DeReal in, and if he has something else to talk about, then we will discuss with DeReal later. But as it stands right now, Michael, it's your floor, and we'll see if DeReal has any response.
What's up, Darius? How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How about you, Michael?
Hanging in there for a Tuesday, just waiting till Saturday. But what's up?
Well, I actually wanted to tie what I wanted to into Purdue, Michigan, so it kind of all just blends in nicely.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, I understand. Some people listen. Tennessee, Mark. We just gotta talk about Tennessee. Okay, I know you guys didn't mention them up, which is fascinating. Tennessee not being in the playoffs, Mark. I understand that Hendon Hooker's injured. But if one injury can cause you not to be in a 12-team playoff, when in my opinion you are clearly one of the 10 best teams, then we shouldn't be playing the games at this point. If Michigan has J.J. McCarthy go down on the first play against Purdue and Purdue wins, then Michigan should be eliminated from the 12-team playoff.
Well,
why?
Good point.
Because there isn't any evidence we have that the backup quarterback for Michigan can do well.
Okay, what about Ohio State when they won the national championship? They beat Oregon in 2015.
I think they should be in there, but there's people that have Tennessee out. I would have Tennessee at 7 or 8.
But even if you have them that high, they're still not going to make the playoff, though.
No, I'm talking about in the 12-team playoff.
Oh.
That they just put out on the Patreon playoff poll. They have them as the first team out as the bubble team.
Because people really know that Joe Milton's not that good of a quarterback.
Well, do we know Michigan's backup quarterback situation?
I don't. Do you, Mark?
Has he played tons of games?
Not that Cade McNamara has been hurt, so no.
So if Michigan's quarterback goes down against Purdue, and I hope he doesn't. I really hope. I don't want injuries to be a factor in football, but unfortunately they are. But if Michigan's quarterback goes down and Purdue beats them, then Michigan should be out of the playoff.
Okay, now let me ask you this. Say, like, McCarthy doesn't go down, Purdue beats him. Are they still going to be in the playoff? Or are you just saying because if he getting injured?
I'm just saying by the logic that was used for the Tennessee, it should apply to a team like Michigan. That's all I'm saying.
Mark, what do you think?
I believe that a team earns a playoff spot based on their performance on the field, and we can speculate all we want about injuries. And the committee has said since day one that they will take injuries into consideration. And we go back to 2014, and they did take it into consideration. Fortunately for Ohio State, they had a championship game to play in the Big Ten where they were able to prove for one game against one of the 10 best teams in the country that they could wallop them with a backup quarterback, a third-string quarterback. Therefore, they had that luxury, which Tennessee's not going to have. But I totally agree with DeReal's point, because basically what the committee's doing is they're saying there's kind of like a sliding scale, that if you would make the playoff otherwise with your starting quarterback, but you no longer have your starting quarterback, but let's say you were in the middle of that playoff 1 through 12, then that's not good enough. You're out. But if you're one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the country with your starting quarterback and then lose him, we're probably going to keep you in. I don't agree with that sliding scale.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Real say it's submitted, or Max Duggan goes out. Are you going to say the same thing about TCU and Georgia?
I'm not. I just want to make this clear. I'm not saying this. This is just my observation from tonight. 12, the playoff the Patreon playoff poll. This isn't me, and I understand I'm not a voter. I'm not on the Patreon, but this is just my reaction. So, based on the logical consistency, yes.
Well, I would think you would just have to ask the other people why they think like that. But I gotta ask you, why are you not?
Well, from what I've heard from the 3 people that were talking in, I talked to One Scoop John in the chat, and he mentioned Hendon Hooker's injury. So it seems like a general theme I have come across is Hendon Hooker's injury.
Mm-hmm.
And if that injury is going to be why Tennessee's out, then I think that should apply to all teams.
Yeah.
I think Ohio State would have played better against Michigan without their 4th-string running back playing. So can I say that, whatever score you want to make the Ohio State-Michigan game, we can adjust that? You could do that.
No, I mean, I don't know also what injuries are relevant and which injuries are not, according to the people that voted Tennessee out. And again, I understand if you want to lower Tennessee somewhat because of it, but if we're going to remove an entire season's worth of football because of it, I don't think that's fair.
I want to eliminate as much judgment as possible and go with the performance on the field.
Okay. I'm with you there. I agree.
And also, another point they brought up was South Carolina and the blowout, the 25-point loss. It was something like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Washington, they have at 7, lost to a team that is 3-9.
Yeah.
So is a 3-9 losing to a 3-9 team worse than losing to a team that I don't know where they have them, but the committee has them in the top 20?
Emphatically, yes. Yes, 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 a million times over. It is worse to lose to a 3-9 team than it is to lose to a quality team like South Carolina that's 8-4 in the best conference in America, especially when that game was 35-31. Like, not every 63-38, I think that was the final score, games are created equal. That game wasn't 28-0 in the first quarter, and then South Carolina just put it on cruise control. No, that was an extremely competitive game for 3 quarters. Then it got out of hand. Completely different situation, in my estimation.
Yeah, and if you want, Mike, One Scoop just put in the chat what I've been mentioning. I don't only mention Hooker's injury. They also got boat raced against South Carolina, ? 2 exclamation points.
Okay.
The first part of that, in my opinion, doesn't matter because it's projection. And the second part, South Carolina is a top, 20 team, 25 team at the worst. I understand it's a bad loss, and well, by their standards, it's a bad loss, and it should hurt them. But just to say that loss is so ill-defining that they are removed from the playoff board doesn't make sense to me.
No.
And One Scoop John, he's a great guy, and if he wants to come on and explain to me why I'm wrong, I would love to have him on to talk to. And shout out to Michigan because they did beat Ohio State, so we can get a go blue for that.
Mhm.
Michael, do you have anything to add to my point?
No, that's like, okay, why did it have to be JJ McCarthy? Why couldn't it have been like Blake Corum or Donovan Jones? He's out for the season. Purdue waxes. Did they still got to be knocked out of the playoff? Because Corum is just as much important to Michigan as McCarthy is.
Maybe.
I actually kind of somewhat understand the point you're making, but I was just using quarterback because I think the general sentiment across college football is that quarterbacks are more valuable than running backs, and by such a large margin, you can lose a pretty good quarterback, and that would be more valuable than losing one of the best running backs in football.
Yeah, but do you think also that they might have took into consideration how bad of a loss it was in South Carolina, on why they wouldn't they're on the outside looking in?
Yeah, but they did beat Vanderbilt the next week by a lot.
Well, yeah. Still.
So that's a matter. And Tony said you're free to vote your own opinion, but it doesn't have to force everyone else to agree with you. I'm not saying everybody has to agree with me.
Mhm.
I'm just on here explaining what I think is wrong with the 12-team playoff. And if I don't change anybody's mind, that's fine. I'm just saying what I have an issue with.
For the committee to be truly fair about this whole injury aspect, what they really need to do is take every team that's under consideration for the playoff, and so that's about 8 teams or whatever the number is, and they need to take a deep dive into their injuries, and not that they're all of the Hendon Hooker status. Obviously they're not, or we would be talking about them, but there are injuries on every team, and they would be making some kind of judgment call that Ohio State's injuries are this level and TCU's injuries are this level, because believe me, there are all sorts of injuries on each team to starting players and impact players that they're not taking into consideration.
Right. And One Scoop John is in the back room, and he does want to come on, Mark. So I think it is only fair
There he is.
to bring One Scoop. One of the knuckleheads
Hey
I've heard.
guys.
Hey, John, what's up, man?
A complete legend on this channel has showed up. Congrats,
Yes, he
One
is.
Scoop
Oh
John.
geez, that's going way too far.
The list of
I
legends is
do
growing. Yes.
I do what I can. So I'll just defend myself on point 2. So I went back to Tennessee's losses. Now the Georgia losses are respectable. I would call that a quality loss. But South Carolina is not exactly an amazing team this year, Drew.
I understand that. But is Arizona State an amazing team?
No.
Then why should Tennessee be ranked below Washington?
Well, I'm not necessarily I'm not advocating for the entire 12 roster. I'm just explaining why I put Tennessee a little lower than some others, but
Yours was because of the bad loss to South Carolina and because of the injury to Hooker, right?
the injury I would say was much more secondary.
For me, it was a loss.
Yeah.
So is the South Carolina loss considered a bad loss because of their record, or what makes it considered bad?
Well, I mean, South Carolina in this
We lost One Scoop John here.
Uh-oh, we lost One Scoop John.
One Scoop is still with us.
Hello?
Maybe
Oh,
take care of his dog.
Hello?
There we go.
So I guess you could say it's tough for South Carolina because they are side by side with Georgia in the 2 losses, right? So compared to Georgia, I think that's not, but let's look at South Carolina specifically, right? They got decent late, right? I have to take into account the entire season. I will say that their final 2-3 games were their best games, or some of their best games. But yeah, you have to look at the total body of work, I think, for when you're evaluating these things.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and if it was like a 1 point or 2 point, okay, you can, fine. That's because that brings it to Alabama territory. If you noticed, Alabama is still 6 on both the Patreon and the official list. So if you look at that, I mean, Alabama, we ranked them exactly where the committee did because their two losses were on the razor's edge, as we called the show the other week. So
your reasoning for Alabama being 6 is not because of the quality of teams that they lost to, but it's by the margin of victory that they lost to.
Well, I think margin has to do with Tennessee, and it has to do with this. So yeah, I think.
Okay, so let me throw out just a scenario, a hypothetical. So let's say Alabama lost to Arkansas by 1. Arkansas, I don't think, is as good as LSU or Tennessee. Would that change where Alabama is placed? Severely change where Alabama is placed?
I think it would. I think that the fact that Alabama lost, like it has to do with the caliber of opponent too, and it has to do with, I think, the margin.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to decipher here is which one is more important. Because to you, it's, for me, I'm interpreting based on this conversation that you believe margin of victory matters more than the opponent.
I think they both matter. I don't necessarily have one in like a pedestal to the other. Bama also lost early in the season, obviously. Yeah, that's a so that's a good comment. But yeah, I think that the margin is razor. So
yeah,
that's why we, so to say that the SEC wasn't, I know that there's a comment the SEC wasn't factored in. Well, there were 3 SEC teams in our top 12, and there were 3 SEC teams in the committee's top 12. So there it is.
Maybe okay, I'll ask Mark. Mark, if you had to weigh on a percentage scale margin of victory versus quality of team, what would you sign each percentage?
75-25 quality of team.
See, I'm probably more than that, but from what I'm hearing from one scoop, it sounds like he's pretty close to 50-50. And there's nothing wrong with it. I just think it's a different way of viewing it.
Sure. Yeah, and what's funny is I thought what you were setting up One Scoop John with there, and maybe you weren't, is that if you assign a better loss to a particular team, so if you take Tennessee and you say instead of losing to South Carolina, you lose to and take a better team on their schedule, LSU, they lost to LSU instead. But obviously they would not have lost or they would not have beaten LSU. So you're taking away a quality win. And for some reason, it seems this way, I might be wrong, that for some people they're focused on the losses. And if there's a bad loss, they red flag that. But if that same team would have turned that red flag bad loss into a win and replaced it with a loss against the better team on their schedule, sure, their losses would look better, but they would have less quality wins as well. I've got Tennessee at 6 and Washington at 9, simply because Tennessee's played a better schedule. That's all there is to it. They've just played in a better league against a better schedule.
So, okay, so how much better do you think their schedule is better than Washington's, Mark?
Decidedly. Tennessee's played Alabama, LSU, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina.
Yeah, but Florida's what, a 6-16?
Pardon me?
Florida's what, a 500 team?
Okay, hold on. I would like to respond to that. Florida is a 500 team. I understand that, but are they not one of the top 40 teams in the country? If every team could play everybody,
Absolutely. Yes.
Florida would probably be one of the top 40 teams in the country.
Absolutely. If anyone wants them play Friday night against Florida State, they understand that they're not a 6-6 team that's playing buried somewhere in the Big 12. They're just not. They're not, West Virginia.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with that. And Larry Pilgrim said, now Florida is good. I don't think it depends on what your definition of good is.
Yeah, I'm not saying Florida is some great football team. They're not. They're flawed, absolutely flawed. They're not a good Florida team for Florida standards. But
they're one of the better 6-6 teams in the country.
Absolutely. I don't know that a whole lot of teams in the ACC or the Big 12 or a lot of other places would want to be playing Florida as one of the as the supposed 10th best team in the conference, because they wouldn't be the 10th best team in the conference.
Yeah, I understand that, but I think my point also is I think Florida's so good at 6-6 they could probably beat some other 8-4 teams from other leagues.
Sure, they could. They've already done it.
Right. Is Duke 8-4?
Yes.
I think Florida would probably beat Duke. As an example, Mark, do you want to add Tim to this chat as well? Just keep expanding.
Sure. I'm gonna go take a nap or something. Here's Tim. Here we go.
But go ahead, Tim.
Larry's got a really good point. You guys spent the entire season laughing at Utah for losing to Florida, but then now in Florida, then when an SEC team loses to Florida, well, hell, they're a top 40 team. You guys gotta pick your benchmarks and stick to them, you guys. Not being real.
My argument points are completely consistent. They're completely consistent.
Okay.
I believe mine are too.
We also
no, they're not.
We also can only evaluate teams based on the information. So obviously, I have a different evaluation of Florida today than I did back in September. Of course, they had only played one game, and that was against Utah.
The point I'm making when Florida beat Utah is that Florida isn't a great SEC team. They're actually below average if you look at the standings.
They're 3-5.
Just purely on the standings. But they beat one of the better Pac-12 schools if you look at the standings. So that should give a credit to the SEC. But my other point is
the Pac-12, you could almost flip a coin. So the 2 or 3 at the top, I think, of the Pac-12 are starting to separate themselves. But we really don't know based on standings and scores. I mean, you guys are diminishing. I've heard you guys diminish Washington on this call.
I've defended them.
I didn't diminish Washington. I've got them ranked 9th in the country. That's a pretty solid ranking. But their resume is not as good as Tennessee.
Why? Because they didn't get a chance to play USC.
I just want to put one more thing out. I just want to put one more thing out about Tennessee. Tennessee gave up 63 points to a mediocre offense. They made Rattler look like Caleb Williams.
Okay.
And they gave up 63 points and lost by 25 to a, as we would say, you guys keep saying that, where would you put South Carolina amongst the pantheon, the SEC?
7th, right as average. They're 4-4, so
just a little bit above Florida, right?
I think they're above. Even though they lost head-to-head, I would have them above Florida.
Just a little bit above, okay? I'm just looking at how we decide which teams are good teams and which teams are bad teams, which teams are good losses, which teams are bad. See, Florida did not Utah didn't lose to Florida by 25 points and give up 63 points. They didn't.
Washington gave up 45 points to Arizona State and lost.
Arizona State.
What was the score? 45 to what?
38.
So a touchdown? They lost by a touchdown.
Yeah, but they lost to a freaking crappy team. We're not talking about they lost to South Carolina. who just beat Clemson. They lost to Arizona State.
We all know.
Suck.
I got you.
They're horrible.
Got you.
They're 3-9.
We all know.
Suck.
We all know that teams are not horrible. We all know teams have
horrible.
off nights, Mark, don't they?
Okay.
Don't they? But
They've
losing
had a
by
lot of off
25
nights if they're
points
3-9, Tim.
by 20. What would South Carolina be? I'm just curious. I want to hear this one. What would South Carolina be this year in the Pac-12? Where would you put them? Where would South Carolina finish in the Pac-12, guys?
They play 9 games. They'd go 5-4 or 6-3. One of the two.
I think Mark's right on it.
5-4, 6-3.
Yeah, depending on the schedule.
Where would you place them amongst the ranking in the Pac-12? South Carolina,
5th or 6th.
5th or 6th.
But
So they're
they
better
can
than
certainly
you're saying. They're better than Oregon State.
And they could, on occasion, play with anybody.
I think they are probably a little bit better than UCLA. I think they could give UCLA a pretty competitive game.
All right, okay. Well, I'm done. I'm pretty much done. You guys, that's fine. You guys are.
Mark, do you think that
you're right? They're probably better than
You just saw them
UCLA. Just
beat
stop,
Tennessee and Clemson.
This needs to stop.
And you're
Mate,
arguing for
South
a team that lost
Carolina-
to Arizona State. Arizona State is horrible.
Yeah, they are. That's one
suck.
game.
They
That's one
are
game.
trash.
They're trash.
They're
not
horrible.
trash.
They're
They're
a
not
3-9 football team.
They're
They
not
lost
trash.
to Eastern Michigan.
They're not trash. They're a bad team. They're not
They're
trash.
a bad team. They're a bad team.
Yeah, they're probably the third worst team in the Pac-12.
Yes, and they beat Washington.
Yeah, they had a bad night.
Okay, let me ask
Tennessee
you.
had a
One
bad
game.
night.
Mark, you have Washington at 9.
I know.
Didn't you just say that? So what are we talking
Absolutely.
about then? Then what are we talking about?
I'm saying that Washington's a good team. I'm rating them to
Right.
have the 9th best resume in the country.
The
we're
ninth-
talking about how Tennessee
agree.
should be ahead of Washington
I
if
totally
you look
agree.
at the resume.
So I totally agree. They're the number 9 team in the country, and everyone in the Pac-12 shook their heads, scratched their head, said, "How the hell did that shit happen?" Right? Because they lost by a touchdown. You know what's not a weird thing? How that happened? When you lose by 25 points and give up 63.
Okay, was it bad
That's
enough
not
for
how did
Tennessee
that
then?
happen? That's an ass kicking. Do
Was
we
it
all
bad enough
agree?
for Tennessee then?
It's an ass kicking in the 4th quarter.
No,
That's-
wait,
Mark.
Mark,
There are
no, it
4
wasn't.
quarters to a Mark. There are 4 quarters to a game.
Yes, there are.
Right. So the score is the score.
No, there are different. If anybody doesn't believe that watches enough football, that
I watch a lot.
every 21-point game is created equal. They're all exactly the same. Or is there context to the final score?
Look, you cannot you can try to put all the context you want on someone losing by more than 3 touchdowns. You can do all the nice flowery language you want, but if you lose by more than 3 touchdowns, you got your ass kicked.
Okay, that's the cutoff. Just 3 touchdowns has to be the cutoff. That's the exact cutoff.
Well,
Okay,
I mean,
Mark.
2 scores.
Okay.
Two
Okay,
scores,
Mark.
that's not a big deal,
Okay,
right?
Mark,
if you lose
let
by
me
10,
ask
you lose by 10 or 14,
Okay,
that's
so
not
you're
ass kicking.
saying, Tim,
Hmm.
you're making the rule that 2 scores is fine. You're not bad. You're okay. But 3 scores suddenly becomes
No,
horrendous.
ready? More than 3 scores.
Okay.
Is what I said.
Mark,
Okay.
Mark,
So
let me ask
25
scores is
25
okay. 4
points.
scores.
25 points is 4 scores, Mark. However we do the math on. That's what's the
Yes,
2-point conversion.
absolutely.
okay, Mark, let me ask you this.
But I don't know how you can come up with a formula that just magically 3 scores is okay to lose by.
What formula am I
you're within
putting
the
it?
ballpark.
Mark,
Or 4
you're
scores.
doing a false narrative. I didn't say anything about it has to be 4 scores. They
That's what I'm
lost by
hearing.
25 points, Mark.
I understand.
But that's an okay loss because it's in some cases a 25-point loss to a team that just got into the top 25 is acceptable.
Tim, come on. You have watched a ton of football. Don't
Yeah.
tell me in looking at the scores from any team, and we'll take it your USC team, that you wouldn't say, oh, we lost by a touchdown there. We lost by 10 there. We didn't look good in this 7-point loss versus this was a hell of a game. We lost by 10.
It's not just the points, Mark. You guys just
Exactly.
lost.
It's not just
You
the
guys, it's kind of a similar thing happened to you guys against Michigan, but that was against Michigan. This is against South Carolina.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? To get boat race in the 4th quarter by a very, very great, excellent Wolverine team, that's, That's going to happen, right? And that's going to happen to a lot of teams. But you know what's not going to happen to a lot of teams? Not a lot of top 10 teams. They are not going to get smacked in the fourth quarter for 25 points by South Carolina. And that's my point.
But they are going to get smacked by Arizona State.
Arizona State's irrelevant. We're talking about Tennessee, and they got their asses kicked.
We were making this started with the comparison between Tennessee and Washington.
That might be your guys' comparison. I'm saying that Tennessee does not belong in top 10. I've been saying that for a while. But that's why I'm coming back to
Washington.
Yeah, I also didn't mention Washington. I was mostly focused on.
You guys are injecting Washington into the conversation.
Yeah, I think Washington is probably the most obvious example of a team that should be ranked behind Tennessee. That's ahead of them. That's why I did it.
I'm just simply I'm sitting here back in my chair, and why I say, hey, can I get back in here? I was literally hearing you guys trying to put so much lipstick on this pig that was turning red. I mean, you cannot. I can excuse what happened to Ohio State. There are some flaws on the defense. I even talked about this the other day, and I think that Knowles did a great job holding back that dam and holding back that deluge. But it finally came through, and my hat's off to Knowles for making a difference in that game and holding back the Michigan Wolverine. They did, but you know what? Yep. Tennessee didn't play Michigan, guys. They got boat raced by Rattler, South Carolina. You guys can sit here and SEC me to death all you want, but I can't sit back and let you guys really. I have so much respect for both of you guys' football knowledge beyond belief. But I'm listening to two guys who I really respect trying to explain to me that losing to South Carolina by 25 points in the fourth quarter, giving them 63 points. It's South Carolina. Come on. They're a good team, guys. And then say, you know what? This is a top 10 team because top 10 teams don't lose that bad to a mediocre team.
Yeah, they do. And I've taken you through history the last time you brought that up, Tim, to let you know that top 5 teams like Ohio State have gotten boat raced by mediocre teams. And throughout the rest of the schedule, what did they do? They won Big Ten championships. They won Rose Bowls. So they showed themselves a legit top 5 team, but they got boat raced by Purdue on a particular night. They had a
there you go, Michael.
They had a bad
Tennessee
night.
do that, though? Tennessee got their asses kicked, and they're probably not going to do anything after it.
All right. Now, Mark, let me ask you this.
Did Tennessee win a Rose Bowl? Did Tennessee go on? And Tennessee also lost. That was their second loss of the season. And they didn't go on a wonderful season like Ohio State did. No, they just got their asses kicked by a mediocre South Carolina team and then lost their starting quarterback, and they're not a top 10 team.
They've only had one opportunity since then, and they blasted Vandy 59-0. And I know it's Vandy, but Vandy just knocked off 2 pretty decent teams.
Well, I mean, if South Carolina's a really good team, Vandy's got to be at least good, right?
They're better than Arizona State. At least the last month they've been.
Well, we don't know because they haven't played each other.
No, but I'm pretty sure we can make a pretty good guess that Vanderbilt would probably win if they played head-to-head.
And Mike Rotonda, what the hell your name is? Tim, you lost to Utah? Utah's 12, buddy. USC's 11-1. USC's top 4. You could talk smack last year, but you just sound like an idiot right now. So feel free.
One scoop. From what I'm hearing with Tim's logic, man, if you scored another touchdown against Ohio State, then they would have been eliminated from the playoffs. There would have been no way they could have got back in there by his logic. So, because it would have been more than 25, right? The game ended up 45-22.
You're missing the point of quality of opponent again.
But don't even bother because you know why? Michigan is not an SEC team. And you can only lose the SEC teams by 25 and still consider it a quality loss.
Michigan's a really good team. Ohio State's a really good team. They're probably 2 of the top 5 teams in the country.
Yeah, Michigan might even be like a top 7, 8 team in the SEC this year. Do you think?
No,
Ariel?
Michigan would probably be. They would probably be 2 or 1.
Oh, probably.
I mean, I don't know their schedule. It depends when they schedule because if they happen to play Georgia, Alabama, LSU back-to-back weeks, I'm not sure how many teams in the country can go even 2-1 with that schedule.
In summation, losing by 3 touchdowns to the number 1/2 team in the country is not a bad loss. Losing to 25 by a fringe top 25 team giving up 63 points to a team that got their butts kicked by Florida the week before. That's a bad loss. And you guys can go round and round.
I didn't say it wasn't a bad loss. That I have said it's a bad loss. Yes, that is a bad loss. Giving up 63 points to anybody and losing by 25 points to anybody is a bad loss. That's a bad loss. And losing to Arizona State is a bad loss. They are both bad losses. Absolutely. They both are.
I guess you have to look at the fact again that you're not giving enough credit to a Division I team. Losing by a touchdown and losing by 25 points, because the difference between Arizona State and South Carolina is not as big as you guys are trying to make it sound. It's not.
Tim, the only win
9 and 8 and 4 is substantial.
Let's look at
Tim, the only wins Arizona State has.
Let's just go through this. Arizona State's losses are to USC, Utah, UCLA. I mean, I can go down a list of the losses.
Wait a minute. I'm not letting you do that. You skipped over Eastern Michigan. You skipped over Eastern Michigan as their first.
They've
loss
had
this
tough
season.
moments.
Am I putting them in the top 25 or in the top 10? I'm not. I'm saying
come on, Eastern Michigan's on it. I think we all believe is on a different level than those teams you just mentioned.
You're completely ignoring the rest of Tennessee's schedule and accomplishments.
The difference between South Carolina and Arizona State is not the difference in that game. You guys can go ahead and keep talking like the Pac-12 is just some G5 conference. That's fine.
Have I ever said that? Anything close to that?
Okay, fine. I'll put it close. Fine. Duriel can continue to make it sound like the Pac-12 is some G5 conference. But and the SEC, the 8th best team in the SEC, probably going to beat the best team in the Pac-12.
Well, last year I suggested that because
I don't know the first half of the season.
Last year I suggested.
So what I'm going to do is do you guys a favor and just say, okay, teams can lose by 25 points to a marginal top 25 team. And hey, if they got a couple of good wins, they're still a top 7, 8 team in the country.
Yeah.
I just
they could be depending
after losing.
It's not a 1-game season. It's a 12-game season.
After losing
all 12.
After losing their Heisman quarterback.
Well, that's a whole other topic.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. Mark,
that's all together. It's the whole thing.
Mark, let me tell you Arizona State's wins, okay? And you tell me which one of these wins just.
I'm not going to argue Arizona State.
Colorado, Northern Arizona, and Washington.
Say Pac-12. I don't care about my conference. I care about my team.
Yeah, but if
normal fans, unless they're again bottom dwellers, they don't live off of the top of their conference. That we don't do that. You don't hear Georgia and Alabama screaming SEC. You don't hear Ohio State and Michigan going Big Ten. But I hear Kentucky fans going SEC, Missouri fans, SEC a lot.
I shouldn't say this out loud since I run a neutral channel and represent myself as neutral, but I root for every Big Ten team in a bowl game, Michigan included.
In bowl games, yeah, of course, but you run around saying Big Ten, chanting it in chat boards?
No.
But it just means more, Tim. It just means more.
Well, Kentucky does have 20 straight non-conference wins.
Please stop.
I mean, 20 straight is a lot.
Well, you guys got to play a non-con with a pulse, and then we could have a conversation.
Louisville, Iowa, NC State. Those are decent teams.
Virginia Tech.
Tech, and we beat Virginia Tech. We didn't even have we had a wide receiver play that game at quarterback.
I'm talking to a guy that thinks a 25-point loss to South Carolina is a good loss. So, I mean, whatever. That's fine.
Hey, South Carolina is 8-4, man, and they beat Clemson. I mean, what does that say about almost the entire ACC? I mean, what's Clemson at worst? The second best ACC team?
Oh, man.
I guess the ACC, by your logic, Tim, we can just throw them out, right?
The ACC champion is going to have losses to Notre Dame and South Carolina.
So, as I've always said, the SEC is the best conference. No one's arguing that. But this idea that the gap is drastically shrinking. And you know what? The best team in the country probably is Michigan. And I can't wait to see the playoffs because they've got a good chance of winning the whole thing. So the idea that the SEC is just rolling through everybody now. I think Ohio State, USC, even UCLA, these teams, Utah. I think Utah. You guys are putting down Utah. I'd love to see Utah play.
Putting down Utah. I've got Utah is ranked as high as the committee does.
There's you, Daryl, and then the entire chat. So when I say you guys, I don't mean you. I'm talking about people in the chat as well.
Collective. Yeah.
Yeah, I forget where I was going to go from this, but all right.
Well, we're talking about the fact that the SEC gap is shrinking.
Oh, I was going to make.
Yeah. Tim, I don't understand that at all. If wins
with USC and UCLA joining the Big Ten, with USC and UCLA joining the Big Ten, that the revenue gap is, which was already good, is going to be even better for the Big Ten. So
is the SEC adding any teams?
Wisconsin and Nebraska just leveled up on coaching. Also,
absolutely, they did. Those were two excellent hires, especially Wisconsin. The thing I'll say in conjunction with what Tim just said about his respect for Michigan, I'll say that after watching USC the last few weeks, especially this Notre Dame game, with Caleb Williams combined with a defense that isn't nearly as soft as I thought it was, that stood up against Notre Dame's ground game. Tim said he'd be interested to see Michigan in the playoff now. A better Michigan team than they were last year. I'll say the same thing about USC, that I'm not going to predict them to win a national championship, but they are going to be much more formidable in a playoff game than I thought they were going to be.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've been calling it since before the season. I said USC was going to go 11-1, and the reason is because not just because of Riley's offense, not just because of Caleb Williams. Those are going to definitely flip it from 4 wins to more than 4. But the defense, everybody overlooked the fact that Grinch has gone up in defensive average every single year, with the exception of Oklahoma's final year. And that all of that combined with schedule. So I think that they're a team that is like in the playoffs. They could beat a TCU. They could even beat Michigan. Potentially, they could beat Georgia. I mean, there is that possibility. And I say could. I'm not saying will, but they need to. I think it's going to be an interesting playoff if everybody takes care of business.
Yeah, I'll even go one step farther. One scoop. I think if USC played TCU, I would pick USC to win.
Yeah.
Okay. Why, Daryl? Why?
I'm just not sold on TCU. Maybe it's just anti-Big 12, but I just for whatever reason have not been sold on them all year, and I think USC has played more great teams than TCU has.
All right. What do they got to do to impress you to say, okay, hey, I was wrong about TCU?
Win a playoff game.
Okay.
And at this point of the season, that's all they really can do. I mean, for their TCU standards and expectations at the beginning of the year, I'm pretty sure we can all agree they have well exceeded any and all expectations. So if you're talking about preseason expectations, then they're by far, in my opinion, they've done by far the best.
But you're talking about beating Kansas State doesn't do anything?
No, not to me.
They're pretty good.
I know Kansas State is good, but when you're in the playoff, I'm looking for great.
Yeah,
I'm not looking for good.
But I think it gives them definitely a notch of additional credibility in their belt.
Okay. Hey, Mark, what was TCU predicted to finish before the season started?
By me?
Yeah.
I think 5-7.
Okay.
That's what they were last year.
Okay.
That's my guess. I believe so.
So you predicted around 500. My thing is, look how long these guys. Yeah, it's like these guys. You get them down, but they keep being resilient, and then they come back and beat you guys late. Does that got to account for something?
Of course,
it does account for something. They're going to be making the playoffs most likely. That's
Michael,
what it counts for.
I think the real's point is there's just a chasm between reaching the playoffs or being in playoff contention versus winning a playoff game. Do you understand?
I understand. But I understand.
Do you understand what teams have won playoff games in the playoff era? It's a list that's like that long.
Okay, has USC won a playoff game?
No, I'm pretty sure actually one scoop John is the Michigan fan. Last year's experience with their team, I'm pretty sure he can tell us about the chasm. There is one.
There's a difference. There's a huge difference.
There is.
Well, if we're going to mention that, I have to say one thing, which is that the goals of the team last year were very definitively beat Ohio State and win a Big Ten championship. And the drop off in play calling showed that they were going to the playoff and treating it like, yeah, they're gonna try to take it seriously, but they also treat it a little bit like a vacation. If you looked at what they were doing all week, they're going on a lot of cruises. They're doing Instagram lives. They hit their goals. So I wouldn't take that, especially since Cade got benched and JJ, who's now our quarterback, actually made the team look like they had a pulse. I just wouldn't take as much stock in that as you're doing.
Yeah, but the thing is though, everybody's saying if USC and TCU would match up in the playoff game, which it won't happen. I mean, it could happen. Everybody's going with USC. Why? What makes them think they're better than TCU?
Well, I've said my reasoning is I think USC has played more great teams than TCU. Tim, you're the USC fan, and fight on to your team. What do you?
There you go.
Remember though, the bet was you sign off with a fight on. But
I'll give you a fight on. How about a fight on, Tim?
So,
Friday.
My thoughts on USC playing TCU, I don't have enough. For the reason you said, I don't have enough on TCU to know. I don't think they played that many really good teams. But it's not like Texas is devoid of talent. It's not like some of these teams aren't any good. So it's too hard. I don't know how they're going to match up at all. That's the problem with trying to guess these matchups, because is there enough really data points to see how USC would do against? We're guessing, we're spitballing. People do it every year. We talk about this team's going to win, now so they come out and blow the doors off people. I think USC's got a really good team. I think TCU's got a really good team. Who's going to win? I've got no idea.
Michael, to answer your question, both these are the only two I could find. College Football News and Fan Nation both picked TCU to go 6-6.
Okay.
That was the general consensus.
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, we all. Yeah, I mean the early preseason predictions were not super favorable.
No.
What I like about TCU, sorry guys, going back, I'm thinking about them right now, is they've got insane team speed. They've just got when I watch them play, it just seems like they're faster than everybody. And I've seen, and I bet you they are going to be a little bit undersized, but I've seen a lot of big, talented football players just have athletic, really fast guys with really good team speed and discipline beat them. So I'll just say this. I think that Michigan and Georgia clearly will be the favorites on those two teams. But I'll tell you what, I'll bet you if you went and talked in the back corner, the back room with their coaching staffs and asked them if they want to face these two teams, I don't think they're going to be very confident at all. I'm sure they got great teams and they're most likely going to win the games. But the speed on USC's team and the speed on TCU's team, the athletes on both those teams, they're probably going to have they're definitely going to be a disadvantage in the trenches. And I know, and everyone knows, the trenches, that's where it's the big games. You win it in the trenches. It's hard to say how a game will go if you've got some teams with team speed to close that gap. So I really am interested in seeing how let's just see through these conference championship games before we start getting ahead of ourselves. But I think TCU would give USC a hell of a game. I don't know who would win that game.
All right, let me ask you this, Mark and Drill, and I'm going to get going after this. TCU's either in the Big Ten or the SEC. Where do you think they have better success at?
The Big Ten.
Big Ten?
Yeah.
What makes you think they couldn't do it in the ACC?
Are they playing West or the East?
That's a good question.
Yep. I'll say the West.
Okay. Well, there you go. Even more of a slam dunk answer.
Then So we call the Big Ten West. D4 started this, the McDonald's Playhouse.
Because that's the only thing.
So if they're in the Big Ten West, then they'd do pretty well.
Yeah, but see, the only thing I'm trying to figure out is, it's usually like that every year. Why does everybody keep saying the Big Ten West is the worst division when we keep beating each other up, but yet the Big Ten East is the best division? Why?
Purdue. I mean, Michael, have you
Purdue
seen
got the
the
three best
out of
teams in
conference, non-conference?
No, I'm not talking.
Wait a minute.
No. I'm not talking out of conference. I'm just
Time
talking
out.
the
One
conference
few, is there a
games.
few teams in the Big Ten East that might be pretty good?
No. I'm take out of conference out of it. Take the out of conference out of it. Just
That's all you can go by. Obviously, the Big Ten West. Michael, here's an education in both sports, structure, standings, and math. If you take the Big Ten Western Division and you line up all the wins and losses against each other, you know what it totals?
It's going to be the same.
Thank you. 500. You how do you evaluate that? How do you judge that?
But why is it like that every year, unlike the East?
Because they don't win against anybody else.
When was the last time the Big Ten West won the championship game?
It never has.
Exactly. Yeah. They're 0-8. Now, to your defense, I'm gonna fight for Michael a little bit here. To Michael's defense, if you add up the wins between the Big Ten East and the Big Ten West against each other, it's pretty close. It's not a slam dunk for the Big Ten East over these 8 years. But you know what the issue is, Michael? That the East has had really, really good teams, and then they've had Indiana and Rutgers and Maryland when they've been awful.
Okay, what about Penn State when they've been pathetic?
Hang on, Michael. So they've lost all the games and they've won all the games, while the Big Ten West has just been a lot of like decent teams. So when you throw them all together to play a complete schedule, it's almost 500. The East is only a few games higher each season than the West, but that doesn't matter toward winning a championship. What matters is how good you are at the top, and the teams in the East are so much better than the teams in the West every year.
Michael, let's put it this way. Where would you rather Purdue play? In the East or the West?
There's been some years I say stick in the East, and some years I say stick in the West. But
John, where would you rather play? In the East or the West?
Oh my God, the West.
Mark, where would you rather play, the East or the West?
Send Ohio State to they'd be playing in Indianapolis, and they would be undefeated right now. Mm-hmm. Michael, let me this you can definitely answer. What was the halftime score when Ohio State played Purdue last year?
What was it?
49-0.
No, it wasn't 49. Now the final score was 59-31. It was like 35-17, I think it was.
No. Anyway, regardless, it wasn't anything close. It was like 42-0. 42-7 at halftime. Anyway, yes, Michael, there's no comparison between the East and the West.
Yeah, okay. I'm just trying to figure out how is it they were just, and I mean maybe other people has too, but how is it those top three teams, the top two teams there is always good, but you could say like even with Penn State, it's been mediocre. Michigan State's been mediocre.
Yeah, but who are the top teams in the West?
It's usually been like Wisconsin or Iowa.
Yeah, and when they're at their very best, like Wisconsin, they're a really good team. They're like a top 12 or 15 team in the country, but that's their peak. That's their ceiling. A 10-2, win a bowl game, go 11-2. That's their very best. And that's good. That's really good, but that's the ceiling for the whole division. It's been Wisconsin. Basically, it's been the ceiling for the division, and they can't do that every year.
Mm-hmm. But what I'm just trying to think, though, is what I mean, is it because of the recruiting or what the talent, or what was it?
Well, you got two monster programs. Well, let's say three monster programs to a certain extent in the East that are just brand names. They got tons of money and resources, and they recruit all over the country, and they bring in top 5 to 10 recruiting classes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I wonder how that's going to change once UCLA and USC comes in 2024.
Not going to.
No, I mean,
Michael, don't listen to Mark. It's going to change.
USC.
No, I'm not talking about USC. When I say that, Tim, I'm not talking about USC not being a factor. I'm talking about for those other teams in the Western Division.
No, I do mean. I mean, well, look at the new coaches. I mean, there's some new. It's not just USC or UCLA. You got Nebraska and Wisconsin have made huge upgrades. Iowa is not going to hang on to that offense much longer, altogether. And so we know that you get the right coach in Iowa, there's also going to be a strong team. So, I mean, it will always be like this. It's not like Penn State's killing it. I mean, they're a good team, but they're not killing it. and then Maryland, and like you said, Maryland and Rutgers. I mean, I don't know. It might balance out a bit. I mean, I'm not being flippant. I mean, it really.
Corey's been talking about Iowa maybe getting Cade McNamara. So that's been something Corey Brad has been talking about a lot.
I've been hearing that too. Remember,
there you go. That's
yeah.
But no, I'm just trying to figure out how's going to be once the divisions go away in 2 years.
Well, Michael, let me ask you this, okay? Is part of the reason you're trying to bring up the Big Ten West might be competitive with the East, or maybe even better, is because Purdue plays Michigan? Does that have any factor in this discussion?
No, it doesn't.
Okay, I just wanted to ask. And maybe I've got my SEC glasses on, but I think Kentucky might have won the Big Ten West this year. I'm not even trolling.
Hey, Michael.
Yeah.
The Big Ten West has had a bad year, but people have a recency bias, and they're dogging the Big Ten West. Now, the Big Ten West has not been nearly as bad in other years as it is now.
Oh, exactly.
True.
The Big Ten West has gone out Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, and I would have to do the math, but held its own in postseason play in bowl games against the SEC, the ACC, etc.
Oh, I remember Iowa coming out to the Holiday Bowl and smacking out physically USC for 4 quarters. So,
yeah, but another thing too, Mark, is the SEC. Okay, take the SEC West this year. They was crap. Have there been years in the past they've been crap, and people still don't dog them?
Did you just
wait a minute? The SEC West is bad. I'm sorry.
No. Okay. This year
it's never been bad.
It's never been bad. So you're
even this year, I don't think it's a bad division.
It's not elite like it normally is, but it's not anywhere near.
You know what it is? It's probably the second or third best division in football, only behind the SEC East and the Big Ten East. And for those curious, SEC East #1 in my personal ranking.
I know, because you guys overvalue LSU way more than I do. So yeah, you're probably gonna be able to say that.
Michael, I'll tell you this. I'll go back way before most of you were born or walking around. When I was covering the SEC and I was covering SEC championship games and all that business, yes, the SEC West wasn't that good in the late 90s. Mississippi State won an SEC West title. They were 8-4. Yes, for a few years, it wasn't that good.
Okay.
Florida, Tennessee owned in Georgia the SEC.
But hasn't it pretty much been the last 2 years? It's been Alabama and then everybody else.
Yes.
We're getting some comments about super chats.
So yeah.
At some point.
Let's run them down. Dan, we appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for the super chat on the screen. 12-team playoff, less regular season games, injuries. That's a great point. We sometimes go through these formats and everything thinking these guys are like we're playing a video game. And yes, they're playing human beings, and that has to be taken into consideration for sure. Manimal Matt, thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your contribution.
Go Blue.
I took into account that we've seen Joe Milton play at Michigan and Tennessee. He has a great arm. Yes, if you want like your cousin to get a souvenir in the third row, Joe Milton's
great.
He's
got a cannon. He's got a cannon. It may not be accurate.
The wrong jersey.
It may sail into Alaska, but he has a cannon. Super chats.
I'm looking for him. Here we go. We've got Jersilly. Is that what I'm looking at there? Thank you so much for your contribution. Haven't seen you on here before. Thank you for that. Does history count in these debates? I'm only asking. Huskies haven't won at Arizona State since 2001. Sounds like they're cursed. Well, I don't know if you believe in curses and jinxes and that sort of thing. But that's a good point there. You always have to define the argument, the debate. Are we talking about right this second, this year? Are we talking history? What are we talking about? And if anyone wants to chime in on any of these super chats, go right ahead. We have Todd. Todd, thank you for being here. We appreciate you, Todd. Seen Todd a bit here in recent weeks. Vanderbilt's better than Florida, who's better than Utah, who's better than USC. Laugh my ass off. Exactly, Todd. Thank you so much for that.
Vanderbilt does that make Vanderbilt the 2022 belt champion? Someone's got to ask Chris Foote. I think that might actually qualify them.
Right. I gotta. I'm getting ready to get out of here, but I gotta show one thing though. With Corn in situation with Corum and Edwards with their injury status right now is
Yep.
if Purdue stacks the box like they did in the second half against IU, can McCarthy beat Purdue on his own with his arm? Or do you think they might be in trouble?
Yeah.
No, they'll have 11 other players out there. But no, I'm just kidding. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, he absolutely. So if they follow a similar defensive strategy as to Ohio State.
Okay, but do you think Purdue
Well, that was my question. Would they be? We're just assuming that Purdue would do the same thing as Ohio State, stack the box really hard.
But
Yeah.
you can
But-
do that, but
question.
you don't have the front seven of Ohio State, so you're not going to be able to do that. It might be a good strategy, but you still need the horses.
Yeah, I was wondering
Just
because
think it's a talent mismatch.
So you think it wouldn't matter, basically?
So I think it would slow us down from like maybe 50 fewer rushing yards.
No. What I'm saying is, if they just focus on stopping the run, can McCarthy have enough to where he can beat Purdue by himself?
Well, I think we were just saying that they wouldn't be able to do it as successfully as Ohio State did in the first half. So therefore there would be JJ wouldn't need to do it all himself. But I do believe that if they did that, then it would be a similar situation where if JJ's throwing laser accurate passes, and then mix that up with Donovan Edwards finding the tiniest hole in the O-line, going to be fine. So I don't think JJ will have to do that.
On the flip side, how nervous are you guys about maybe? Do you think Maccabee can maybe have a good game, maybe like close to 100 yards, maybe a couple or you think he's gonna be shut down? And what will happen if O'Connell just goes ballistic?
I think O'Connell will. I think O'Connell is going to get some. He's going to score points.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question. We're just going to have to score more.
So you think it'll be last team shootout? And who do you think that favors?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it would be a shootout, but I think I was thinking kind of like a 31-21 type of game or a 41-31. I haven't picked my final score yet, but I'm thinking that kind of margin where both teams are scoring. Both the defenses are doing something. Michigan's defense doing a little bit more. Just like the talent mismatch alone, I think, is a factor there. But Purdue's a great team, and they have you guys have a good offense. I was just saying in chat to somebody, I think it was Darrell actually, that Aiden actually has the 20th highest amount of passing yards in the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not bad. And then they also have the thing where they've been giant killers before too. Boy, I wish you can get up here Saturday night because I had an extra ticket for you, John. I really wish you could get up here, man. Because I got a feeling it's gonna be a heck of a game, man.
I appreciate that. That.
But anyway, so no, I got a feeling. Tim, is USC gonna get the break this time where they get the pass interference call?
I'm hoping it doesn't come down to that. I can tell you this: there's good news. Michael Mothershed and his crew. Michael Mothershed will never ref another Pac-12 game ever again. But I don't think he was actually the. I don't remember. I don't think he was actually the referee or his crew in that game. But listen, the reason why I'm confident against Utah is not because of anything other than the fact that I think that this is year one for USC, Lincoln Riley and this team and this defense, and they have been getting better every single game.
Mm-hmm.
And Utah is just dinged up. I think it's unfair. We're playing a team that's hurt, but you know what? There's nothing worse than a wounded animal. And they got it. Whittingham's a great coach. You can't ever take these teams for granted. I've watched enough USC Pac-12 football to know that anything can happen in this game. I'm confident. Again, the fact that I think we're getting better. We're playing our best ball right now. I think that Caleb Williams is truly becoming Superman. But at the same time, they're hurt. So I think we're both going in different directions right now, and it's still gonna be a good game.
Yeah. In case you wonder, it's Mark Duddy who is the official, who is the referee for that game. All right, guys, I've taken too much of your time, but thanks anyway, Mark. It's gonna be fun this weekend. I got a feeling.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate
you. Guys, have a good one, man. See you, Uncle Lance.
Hey, Michael.
Is Purdue unranked?
Yes.
Oh well,
Currently.
I believe they're more dangerous unranked than ranked. So
agree.
That's been the history. Dan Rutherford, thank you so much for the contribution. There needs to be an option to pay $5 to eliminate a call-in participant. 12-team playoff is going to get kids hurt, cut some games from the schedule.
Oh, I'll totally go away if you want to pay $5.
Well,
Absolutely.
no, hold on. Look at the avatar. He doesn't want you to go.
Oh.
I'm guessing. I'm guessing it's me. Yep. Send in some money. I can get out of here.
Erica, I've forgotten what you guys are debating about at this point, but I love the passion. Thank you, Erica.
Go Hawks, Erica.
Eric and I were hanging out in Corey's channel yesterday. He did a little call in about Cade, and that was a good time. But thanks for all y'all being nice. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. I think we've hit everyone. I think. And yeah, thank you everyone for the contributions. I believe we will get to our final call of the night. How about that? We've got Christopher on the line. Chris, how you doing?
Hey,
Yes.
Chris.
Yes, I get to answer my question. How are you guys?
What's going on?
How are you doing, Tim? I like
I'm
you.
doing wonderful, Chris. How are you?
Chris,
Doing all right.
good seeing you, man.
Thanks, Darrell. I'm sorry, I get a little sarcastic in the chat. I just get so.
No, you're fine. You're cool.
I have nothing against Tennessee. I actually think they're a great program. You know, I don't know if you're aware. I think Mark shared it with some of you people, maybe not. I did a fairly comprehensive, what I think was a fair, assessment of. It's under the all-time programs, and I can't remember exactly where Tennessee was, but they're amongst the very best from all-time percentage. I don't know exactly.
I think Tennessee's probably one of the 10, 15 greatest programs of all time.
Well, I think they're closer to the top 5 or 6, but I can't tell you for sure because I don't have it right in front of me. But if you go under all-time program rankings, Mark did a podcast on it. You'll see where I put them, and it's not really me doing it, but make
Chris,
of it
what happened to your rankings you do underneath Mark's team? That actually makes sense. I liked looking at those rankings. Now I didn't agree with every single one, but I agreed with the general placements of the teams. And I will give you some credit. You were really high on James Madison early in the season, and James Madison was a nice story this year. I got to think so.
Well, like I try to explain it, it's not really. I mean, yeah, I guess in a way it is me doing it, but in a way it's kind of not. But I don't really need to get into that anymore. That's kind of been already discussed. But yeah, if they were rated high, it was because I think in my opinion, they deserve to be there. But they haven't really finished that strong, so I don't. I think when you start to lose, that kind of changes the percentage of where they're at. But
oh yeah, it should. I think it should.
Okay. Anyway, Tim mentioned, so I hope you don't mind. People don't like talking about the belt. It's not. I didn't invent the belt. I mean, I'm just. But if you want,
to be honest, I'm just teasing you. I honestly don't even know what the belt is, but that's okay. I'll go back and watch one of the explains.
It's like a boxing championship, Tim.
Huh?
Yeah.
It's like a boxing championship. Like you win the belt, and despite what John's record might be, if he fights you and wins, if it's for the belt, he wins the belt. Then the belt can get passed on to each team.
So who starts with the belt?
The champion.
So who starts with the belt? 'Cause we need a champion.
Baylor took it into this season. I mean, that's just who it was, and then it's been passed on since then. And it wouldn't be that hard to figure it out. Baylor lost to BYU in overtime. I think BYU lost to Oregon. I think Oregon took it to Washington, and I think it's Washington's right now, isn't it?
Wait. Georgia was a champion. So wouldn't someone have to knock out the champion and get the belt?
Well, that's another subject. If you want to make it about that, then yeah, you're right. But that's not what the belt is. So,
Chris, clarify this. Does it go season to season? Does it goes to the next season? It transitions, correct? And I remember I followed you at some point where we were with that. And there was some kind of Ole Miss got it from somebody in the SEC because Alabama had it from the previous year. Was it? No. Wasn't it Alabama from 2020, correct, as the national champion?
They won it. They won it. They had that, yeah.
Yeah, and then did Ole Miss beat Alabama, and then Baylor took it from
and I think who beat Texas A&M? It must have been
Texas A&M. Yeah, that's what it was. Texas A&M beat Alabama. Then
Ole
Miss beat Texas A&M.
Well, and I guess apparently Baylor beat Mississippi.
Baylor beat Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl. So
mean,
Baylor at the end of the season is the belt champion. How about that?
Until he lost to BYU, and then it was BYU. And then Oregon
Yeah,
beat
BYU absolutely has to be the belt champion. Of course.
Yes.
That's not what I'm saying. I mean, if you want to make it about BYU, go ahead. I didn't do it so BYU could win it. That's just who took it.
Who is the current belt champion, Chris?
And you guys are sarcastic about it. I don't really appreciate that. Like, oh yeah, I did it so BYU could get credit. Okay, yeah, that's why I did it. I knew in advance that BYU was going to.
You know who has the belt?
You're just having a laugh, man. Don't take it personally. It's not. I promise you, it's
kind
not
of
personal.
It's kind of hard not to when you be sarcastic about it. I didn't give it to Baylor. I didn't give it to Baylor. All right.
Well, so the question was who has it now?
Okay. Well, it was Oregon until they lost to Washington, so I guess it would be Washington at the moment. But the thing is overtime kind of enters into it a little bit, and so I think kind of what it was split there for a little bit. But I think Texas Christian has the split side of it, so we're good on Texas Christian as long as they don't lose. But what I like is a unified championship is kind of where I'm coming from with it. Now we can say whatever we want to about Utah maybe being a better team than Washington. I'm not. I guess in the what was it in the rankings they came out with? I guess if we go on rankings, then I guess it is Utah. But I kind of think now it's another missed opportunity. Whether you agree with me or not, why isn't it Washington playing USC? I think to me that's like a no-brainer. It's like, okay, you can give me a million reasons why it shouldn't be, maybe, and I think all of them would be terrible. If you want my opinion, I think we shouldn't even be debating about whether. I think it should be Washington versus USC. The winner advances. Well, not necessarily. I guess if Washington beat them, maybe not. But ideally, I guess in the perfect world, the winner advances. But now we have to deal with the split championship, whether we want to or not. And I think that kind of sucks.
Okay. So Chris, let me try to re-explain what you said, and let me see if I got it correctly. So your point was Utah already beat USC. So because of that and USC having their place, you don't want to see a rematch in the Pac-12 title game. And that with Washington having a better overall record, you think Washington should have the spot in the Pac-12 title game over Utah. If it was based,
I don't know that it's ever been about me. If you want to make it about me, go ahead.
I'm just saying,
Mark,
this is just what you think should happen. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying this is what you think they should do.
I think if you put two people together and half intelligent people together, I think we'd all agree that it should be Washington, but maybe I'm way out in left field on that. I don't think Utah should even be in the discussion. No. I think they're out. I think they should be out. But they lost to Arizona. Well, Washington lost to Arizona State. That proves, I guess, that Washington lost to or got beat by Arizona State. I guess that proves that Washington isn't any good. Well, does it really prove it? I don't know.
Where do you have Arizona State ranked? And are they higher than South Carolina?
Well, let me real them.
Do you have a chance here at all?
Are you asking me about how high Arizona State would be? I don't know for sure. I'd have to check into it. I don't know. But
conversation.
They wouldn't be very high. They'd be probably pretty low if that's what the answer is. They wouldn't be very high at all. Would they be above South Carolina? No.
I totally get your point. I get your point that we have not seen Washington and USC play. We did say Utah and USC play. Obviously, USC gets their spot because they have the best record in the conference, and Utah got its shot, and Washington, we have not seen that game. So I totally get your point. There's just a structure to the Pac-12 or any conference rules in breaking a tie, and it landed on Utah because of the common opponent's record.
No, I don't think it did. But that's fine.
It actually did. That's exactly, Mark explained it right. There was a tie amongst the leaders under their conference record, and there were a number of tiebreakers, and it came down to that had to go pretty far. The fact that their basis, I don't know, I'd have to have Larry explain it. Anyway, it was ahead of time. It wasn't like they made up after the games. They said going to the games, this is what has to happen. So clearly, there was a system in place.
I guess if you use a lousy tiebreaker, I guess maybe you do get Utah. But if you use a smart one, you don't. I mean, I don't know. I mean, go ahead and make it.
It was agreed to prior to the season.
Go ahead and make a case for it. I don't think it stands up to any kind of reasonable explanation. But if you want to go ahead and do it, go ahead and do it.
Larry Pilgrim's saying strength of record, which is actually a pretty good metric. So,
well, I don't know. I mean, okay, strength of record. I guess I don't even really know what that statistic is. I haven't really looked into it. I guess that has Texas Christian way at the top, which kind of tells me it sucks because I don't know that Texas Christians should be at the top. But if you want to use it, go ahead. That puts them at the top, I think. I think Real MVP said that. So go ahead and use strength of record. I mean, I'm not really even against that if that's what you want to use. I think that puts Ohio State in over. I think that puts Ohio State in over USC if you want to use that.
Chris,
Sure.
It wasn't the only thing they used. It was one of the things they used, and it was fourth down the line. So at some point, you're gonna. It's the big picture of everything.
No, I don't think so. I'm sorry, Tim, and I respect you. I think if any reasonable person, and I'm sorry, here's another one, okay? And this was used before, so I think I'm fair and kind of even try to apply it. Back when the BCS, I know we don't use the BCS, and people get all pissed off at me because I promote the BCS. Who cares? It's not around. But it's called BCS Know-How, and what they do, it's the same formula, basically, pretty close. They use the Associated Press poll, I think, instead of the Harris poll, but it spit out Washington ahead of Utah. It just did. I mean, I don't know. And you say that what it is they want to put the two best teams together. Well, then again, it's Washington, and I mean, there's really no discussion. Now, if it's the CFP, then I'm wrong because they just came out with the CFP. But I kind of wonder if that wasn't like accident by design. You know, we screwed up. We can't put. They're going to tell us we suck if we put Washington ahead of. You know, I think that's like trying to fix a problem after the fact. It's like, so I think I'm suspicious on some of that.
Hey, Chris, there's one thing to be considered in addition to what Tim explained, and that's that the guidelines are created and agreed upon before the season starts. It's not like they're making this up on the fly, number one. Number two is that all the rankings that you're including are taking into account all games, meaning their entire season, out of conference games, everything included. The Pac-12 is just looking for the team that earned it within the conference based on the
best teams. No, they want the two best teams. And you know who that is? That's USC and Washington. They're into discussion. I don't want to hear any different. I know that's what it is.
Chris,
I mean,
they've updated the strength of record. So let me explain the new strength of record. Maybe I'll push Tim to your side a bit. TCU's 1, Michigan's 2, Georgia's 3, Ohio State's 4, Alabama is 5, USC 6.
Well, here's where I want to push back. It's because the strength of record within a conference, not because it's based on. Here's the thing: it's within a conference. Once you start spreading it out, then it becomes a little more subjective.
Let the real MVP finish. Where was Washington and Utah?
Let me go.
And I want to ask you as well.
Utah is 19th. Washington is 12th.
Okay, there you go. End this discussion. As far as I'm concerned.
State is 16, by the way.
Well, there's other factors.
No, I don't think so. If we said we had to do it by strength of record, well, there you go. It's Washington again.
What I just said I said Larry Pilgrim said his strength of record. I said I don't know what the fourth tiebreaker was.
The strength of record within the conference, not.
I don't have that. I don't have the strength of record within the Pac-12. I have the strength of record overall.
Exactly. That's what the Pac-12 is determining. Just like every other conference in America, they don't take into consideration non-conference games.
Well, they're entitled to put whoever they want in there. Don't get me wrong. It's like, who am I to tell what somebody should do with their own? You know what I suspect, though? And you call me nuts. It's very hard to beat a team twice in a row. Advantage USC is what this is. That's just how I see it. I think it's
Chris. In order for your thoughts to be logical, they would have to have come and gone back in. So known this season, gone back in time, set up this system so that when we got to this point, USC would have the easy win.
I'm not saying easy win. I'm saying it'll be a hell of a hard game to beat. I'm just saying that they put the wrong team in there. That's all I'm saying. And I guess they can do it. You can pick whichever three of the teams you want to put in there, and probably nobody can say anything about it. But, I think that's happened. That's not the first time that's ever been an issue. That's happened many times, I think. I remember one year, I think Mark knows, it was Michigan State, Ohio State, and Wisconsin were all tied. I think Wisconsin went to the Rose Bowl. Ohio State went to the Sugar Bowl. And Michigan State, I think, where did Michigan State go, Mark? I can't really remember. Was it the Cotton Bowl, maybe?
The Capital One Bowl.
Well, they all tied. They tied. I mean, there wasn't a conference. They didn't have a title game, so there was a tie on and it all worked out, I guess, pretty well. But Wisconsin, I think, they went and played TCU is who it was, I think.
Well,
was
the big difference is there was no Big Ten championship game then. The three tied for the conference
Well,
championship.
my point is, it's a three-way tie. It's not it's not necessarily that Wisconsin necessarily won a tiebreaker. I think
Okay. Okay, Larry has put in the I guess the metric. Washington was 11-17. Oregon was 16-12, and Utah was 17-11 against common opponent strength of record. So Utah has that tiebreaker by, it looks like, one game over Oregon.
I don't really want to.
He just posted it, Mark, so you'd have to scroll pretty much toward the bottom.
What do you mean by that? That's the saying. That's their
Do you
opponent.
say you have a bias towards Utah for any reason?
I've never really thought about it. No. I mean, you think I'm trying to like punish Utah for something? No, I don't really do that.
Are you a BYU fan?
Oh, sort of, but I never went there. I don't know that you can really say I never attended there. Yeah, maybe to some extent. I lean towards them, I suppose. And I know you hate me bringing it up, but one of the reasons I think BYU's schedule was legitimate was the fact they had to beat Utah in Salt Lake City in 1984. You can say, well, Utah wasn't worth a you-know-what, but I don't know that that's
Why
really.
does that matter?
Why does what matter? Well, I'm talking about just in terms of making the right choice as far as who the national championship, but that's neither here nor there. But why does it matter?
Might be that your dislike of Utah being in the championship game might have something to do with the fact that you're a BYU fan.
Utah wins, I think, on average, 2 out of 3 times they play. I mean, somebody brought it up, I think, earlier that why didn't Utah just play BYU? That's an easy win. Well, the reason they look at it as an easy win is I think on average, Utah almost always beats BYU. I mean, it's not even really. There's really no doubt that in the average over the course of kind of like the Ohio State, not like that, but I think they called it the Holy War. Then it became the Deseret Duel or something like that because it was they didn't want like the war part of it. But yeah, Utah wins on average. I think 2/3 of the time, on average. That's on average. But that's just the history there. I mean, Utah pretty much owns the history. Am I anti-Ute? No, not really. I have a cousin that went there. He loves the Utes, so I don't know how you could say I'm an anti-Ute, but
62-35, Utah.
Well, roughly 2 to. Well, okay. I guess they closed the gap. It used to be 2-1. Maybe it's not as high anymore. But it still definitely leans towards Utah, though, right? I mean, am I anti-Utah? No. I actually kind of think they probably should have played BYU. I kind of think it's too bad that they couldn't. I think that's a good rivalry to keep going.
Well, Chris, if you want my opinion, I thought BYU should have represented the Pac-12 and maybe the Rose Bowl last year because they did go 5-0, right, Mark?
Yeah. Yes, they did. They did.
So maybe they should, and they beat Utah, right?
Utah.
So hey, listen, maybe BYU should have represented.
No,
and maybe
they
Marshall
said
should represent whatever Notre Dame's bowl game is, or the ACC champion.
Well, you guys have to poke fun at these schools. It's like you think it was easy for Marshall to beat Notre Dame like that. Oh, that was just a fluke, I guess.
No, it's impressive.
No, you guys have to paint it a different way. Like I guess Notre Dame didn't play for that. They must not have.
It's so impressive. My mind has to paint it a different way because I see Ohio State and Michigan as an even matchup year in and year out, but I don't see Marshall and Notre Dame as an even matchup. So when Marshall does beat Notre Dame, I paint it as very impressive for Marshall.
Well, I kind of paint it as a fluke if you want to know the truth. I actually kind of paint it as a fluke because I don't think it should ever happen. But when it does happen, I don't want to take credit away and well, that doesn't count because XYZ, and that's kind of like.
Oh, no. I'm not taking credit away from Marshall at all. Actually, the only reason I brought it up was to give them credit because they deserve the credit. Because it's one of the best upsets of the year, like App State, Texas A&M. They should get all the credit in the world for that.
I think Southern Alabama was it this year? I can't remember. They almost beat UCLA. That was this year, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yes, that is correct.
I'm not much for close but no cigar wins. I kind of think you either do it or you don't.
We love all college football fans love huge upsets when the team that has no business winning wins the game. Right,
wait a minute. This does circle back to an earlier point. Tim was upset that we thought South Carolina could be competitive against UCLA, but South Alabama was competitive against UCLA.
Yeah, absolutely. Clearly, UCLA is not a good football team, really, right?
Southern
Going
Alabama.
back to upsets, like Vanderbilt over Kentucky, right?
Southern Alabama's a damn fucking good football team. Sorry for the bad way.
Okie dokie. Chris,
They
we've seen
are.
the side of
Chris
you.
we struck a nerve with Chris here.
Well-
You're a closet South Alabama fan, I guess.
No, that's not it at all, Mark. And I threw a little bit of a dig at your, not because I don't think you know what you're doing. I think you do. But, I had Tulane, and it's not a feather in my cap. It's just the ratings put Tulane ahead of Kansas State. And it's like, oh, well, nice coincidence or whatever. But number 10, I think, or number 11, maybe. But to me, it kind of tells me that I'm at least close to maybe at least getting some of it right. And it's like people don't even talk about it. It's like, I did like the fact those guys that had the playoff, I'm glad they included Tulane. I don't know that Tulane would advance, probably. They probably wouldn't, in all fairness. They're not going to advance probably in a 12-team bracket. But I'm glad at least we're making progress as far as getting the right teams in it. If it has to go to 12, they did put, I have to kind of tip my hat a little bit to those guys. You included Tulane. I think, tip my hat to you. I think that's a good thing. I don't know if that was by design. I don't know how they went ahead and did it, but I had to kind of even admit, if that's the way the playoffs are actually going to be, and if it includes Tulane for, who they are this year, then I have to say that that's probably, at least if nothing else, that's a fair bracket. That's fair.
Whoa.
Well, it is.
Did you just, wow. I think we've made we've broke ground here.
Well, no,
I know that for a long time you were about just going back and forget the playoff and forget the
I haven't changed my opinion on that, but yeah, if you're going to have 12 team, if you're putting Tulane in there, that shows you're doing something right. So good.
We try over at Patreon.
But I think you should, though. I don't think if you're going to put Kansas State in there and not put in Tulane, then you might as well just come right out and say that, hey, we're biased. If you're going to put Kansas State and not Tulane, you should say, well, we're doing this because we're biased. At least admit you're biased. But you included Tulane, so at that point, I don't think it is about bias.
Well, Chris, the new system is set up so that there will be that team added in.
Well, nothing's in stone, but I thought the contract itself went through 2025. Am I wrong?
It kind of is. It's determined, and it's.
Well,
there's a G5. There's a G5 team. I think it's guaranteed.
You guys aren't really telling me anything I don't really know about. There probably should be a G5 team. I guess it isn't really that you want Tulane then, because you have to put one in there. So we better make it Tulane, right? Now it's more about, now we're getting back to the bias part again. We have to include somebody, may as well put Tulane in there. But I guess I'm not necessarily saying that it would be any different. Like I say, I don't think Tulane would advance. They're barely in my top 12. If you want to know the truth, I don't even know that they would. They probably get beat first round by whoever, no matter who they played, unless it was. And even
they weren't voted top 12. I would think they're maybe probably closer to 16, 17, 18. I'm
talking about my proficiency rating. It has them at number 11, right ahead of Kansas State. They should both be in there. If you're limiting it to 12 teams, my whatever you call it, mine would include both. Yours included them. So I can't say that you're necessarily wrong, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I think I agree that we need one. Just because you might be right about who you put in there doesn't necessarily mean that it's justified. Oh, now we justified it, I guess. Well, we don't know who the national championship's going to be. We have to include 6 other teams or 9 other teams. I don't really think that's – what does that do? It makes it easier. It doesn't do anything, as far as I can tell.
Well, Tony's clarifying in the chat. The reason Tulane is in there has nothing to do with bias. It's because they are the highest ranked.
Because you have to include
conference champions. There's a system to doing it.
Because you have no choice. That's why you have to do it. So we better, which I think says that you're still biased. But it doesn't really matter. I think, like I said, what I would be promoting if I had to, and I don't really want to, but actually this wouldn't even include Tulane. BCS protocol still applies, to not really directly. In fact, I'm disappointed with the committee. I don't think USC belongs ahead of Ohio State. And that's not because I have this love affair with Ohio State. I don't see USC as being better than Ohio State. They could beat them, no doubt. But I think this early on, I think it shows that the committee doesn't know what they're doing. If they have Ohio State. Yeah.
How could you say that?
Well, hold on, John. I guess you're the right. You might be on the right message, but you are the Michigan fan here talking about Ohio State. So maybe
Maybe I should
Maybe you
answer.
should let somebody else
or
do
maybe,
it.
Or maybe Mark, or me, the Trojan, or the Buckeye.
Yeah,
I think
somebody
everyone
was
has
in
a
Michigan
bias.
or Ohio.
I'm not biased. I think Ohio State's probably better than USC, but
So
it doesn't really matter. Thinking it make it real.
here's at least my perspective on it, Chris. Right now, USC's 11-1, Ohio State's 11-1. Neither one of them has an overwhelming schedule advantage over the other. So we could debate all night over who should be ranked higher. However, USC has put themselves in position to play a conference championship game. Therefore, if they win that conference championship game, they will have one more quality win on their resume, plus, more importantly, a conference championship, which solidifies them as being the team that earned the playoff spot.
I don't know that I object to that, but at this early on, though, it's like jumping the gun.
What do you mean this early on? There's only one game left.
They haven't beaten anybody else yet. I mean, and then, like I said, why can't I don't understand. Okay, well, I guess they need to what? To get that loss off their resume, they have to play the same team again? I don't see why that really matters. And I think that makes it.
Well, just compare the losses though. Just compare the two losses.
Loss?
Look
What?
at the margin. So look at USC's loss. Look at
John, please
Ohio
don't go
State's
back
loss.
to the margin of victory
Look at the
conversation.
margin. I understand that Michigan's a good team. I get it, but and I'll shut up.
Okay. No, I can.
Margin of victory. Ohio State is a great team. USC's a great team, but I mean, Chris, you've got to admit, if USC does beat Utah, even though you don't think Utah should be in there, you think Washington should be in there. It's kind of a moot point because USC would jump Ohio State, right?
I don't know that I think Utah shouldn't be in there. I just don't think they're the right team. It's like
okay. Regardless, if USC wins the Pac-12 title, they should be in there over Ohio State, right?
Well, if they win, sure. But they
Okay, so it doesn't really matter where Ohio State and USC are ranked this week.
Real, I've heard your points before on this, and I mean, I actually think Mark and mine align more than yours in the fact that if you win you have the opportunity to win your conference. And so let's say USC, I thought, was ranked higher than somebody, and we lost our conference, and they go right ahead of us, or I don't have an opportunity to play in the championship game. Winning a conference championship should matter because this year in the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, we could all argue this. If one is better than the other, it's not by much. And so if you win comparable conferences, are you going to leave a champion from another conference out because you think that this team is better than the other team? You're what we're trying to get away from when we go through the polling system and even the BCS system is we're trying to make this happen so it actually plays out on the field. And if you start saying, well, I think these two teams are better in this one conference, so let's leave this conference champion out with an identical record. What are we doing then? We're going backwards. And if it was the Pac-12 of 2021, I wouldn't be embarrassing myself in this conversation. But this year in 2022, the Pac-12 and the Big Ten are comparable conferences. Therefore, the champions should be given a lot of credit.
I just think, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Tim. Did you have more to say?
No, that's it.
Well, no, I mean, I say we compare resumes. And, I don't see that USC has a better resume. I mean, you can say, well, Utah.
How do we know that? How do we know that? I mean, we talk about resumes all the time, but even that's subjective. The data points are so small. You like numbers. You like numbers and data.
I do.
There's not enough data points between USC and Ohio State to say which one's better. The only data point we have would be a common opponent. And even that's not very strong. That's a very weak data point.
Who's the common opponent?
Notre Dame.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good point. I agree with that.
But one game, one team is to choose who's better because of that there's just not enough data.
No.
So what you have to do is fall back on the fact that we have two teams.
That's a wash.
Both teams have the opportunity to win their conference.
That's a wash.
One team may win their conference, the other team didn't. Therefore, you defer to the team that won their conference.
I don't know how the common opponent applies if they both beat them. I mean, that's kind of getting back to what I was trying to make about the team that should have gone to the. We don't have to guess about who should go. It should be Washington. There shouldn't even really be a debate about it. It should be Washington. We should all be like, yeah, they sure did the right thing by putting Washington in there. Instead, we're talking about Utah, who, in my opinion, was probably the least qualified as far as like you say, common opponent. So it's obviously not based on common opponent.
The least qualified?
Yeah.
Out of how many?
You
Are
have
we just
3
talking
teams
about least qualified versus
3 teams qualified, and 3 equally. I'll make it fair. 3 equally qualified. Well, let's look at resume and all that. Oh, I guess maybe if you want to get down to where, inside the conference, Washington lost to the worst team or whatever. I guess that might be true, but I don't think that kind of. I think when you talk about a tiebreaker, though, that's like the least important thing. You go, that might apply later down the line. We're talking about resume, and Washington beat Oregon. Oregon beat Utah. That's it. We know it's Washington. I mean,
That's why. See, this is the problem, and this is where I want to go with this whole thing, and I'll be done. That's why we need to get away from this resume, the top best teams, etc. Blah blah. If we want to do that, then let's call it an invitational, like we've all been kicking around here for the past 6, 8, 10 year, 6 months, a year. If you want to call it a playoff, you put the top teams that win their conferences up against each other, and whoever wins, win. And if you want to be in the playoffs, you win your conference. How difficult is that, really?
Well,
and because we had 4,
Chris,
and because we had 4, it was always a messed up system because you're trying to do a playoff with 4 teams and 5 power conferences, and then independents and let's say G5. But let's just call it just the 5. If we really want to make this a playoff, why don't they just go to the 5 teams, 5 and 4? Shows a little bit of subjectivity, but 5 and 4 play in, and you go from there. That's how it should be done. It won't. You know why? Because there's more money in getting more games and more teams and making it into a circus.
One thing, I don't necessarily want to push this because it goes against what you guys are wanting, which is greater participation, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I can kind of see maybe moving forward, getting more quality teams, because they have to be quality to even be in there. And so, like I said, that bracket, like I told you, whether it was by design or whatever, it included Tulane. I can't really say that that's wrong. I don't know if it was because you didn't have any options, but you did put Tulane in there. And I wouldn't have put anybody else in a G5 other than Tulane. So, I mean, I can't say that that's a bad thing to do. And I actually like the idea of 12, if you want to know the truth. I think I mentioned that once before, that of all the possible scenarios, I think 12 is probably the best one you could, that I could do if I had to do it. But I'm just concerned that we'll get into these kind of like with real, well, let's make sure it's, packed and loaded with SEC teams. Well, I mean, sure, if they're the best teams. But I think what it boils down to is there ought to be a relatively, fairly easy way to determine. And like I said, I use what I said is the BCS, even if it's outdated. It might not be the most current, but I think it's at the very least it's proven to work. And I don't know that probably wouldn't even include Tulane. I don't think it does, but something that's maybe been they've gone through and maybe worked out just put the top 12, cut it off at 12, and it doesn't even have to be if there's no G5, there's no G5. You don't have to have a G5 in there if they're not qualified. Like I say, my rating actually would have included Tulane, not because I want it to, it just would have. They would have been in there along with Kansas State. So, I mean, what you're having actually is relatively, I think, relatively close to what I want. I just don't know that we need it.
Okay, I'm going to try to bridge some of the gap here between you and what Tim wants.
Okay.
So, Tim, you want the best.
Bridge the gap, and then we're going to burn the bridge as soon as you get done.
Okay, so what I think should happen, I think if you want the 12 teams, that's fine. And if you want the representation, that's fine. But I think the ranking should just be based on how good the team is. And you shouldn't give buys to any of the conference championships or anything like that. If TCU happens to be ranked as the 9th best team, then they're the 9th best team and they should have to play whoever they play. I think that would be a happy medium for both sides, because the people who want the representation of all the conferences plus the G5 get it, and the people who want the merits of who people believe are the better team get that as well. So I think that would be the best system.
All right. The real, we appreciate it. Chris, thanks for jumping on.
Well, can I add one more thing, Mark?
Here. Yes, if it's 10 seconds or less.
I don't think point of victory really matters. You either win or you don't. You win by 100 points. I don't know that changes anything. That's just an opinion. I don't think it really makes any difference unless it goes into overtime.
Thanks, Chris.
All right. Have a good night.
Here. All right. There we go. All right. One scoop. Appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. Just want to
Yeah.
say join the Patreon.
Yes. Join the Patreon, folks. Please get to talk to these guys. You got Tim here. You got One Scoop here. You got a lot of other great folks.
Hey, hold on, Daryl. When are you joining the Patreon?
Call them out in front of everyone.
Yeah, thanks for the call out. Shameless call out there, Tim.
I'll pay for yours if you want to try for 1 month.
No, I'm good. I'm good. But thanks.
Shun us like that, really? Okay.
So the other things that you get with Patreon, you got everybody asks me about joining the panel for After Dark, and like, you have too many Michigan fans and you have too many this type of fan. Well, guess what? Join the Patreon, and you too can be on the College Football After Dark panel. If you're a Buckeye, if you're a conference that we don't get a lot, like a Big 12, it doesn't matter. Just join the Patreon. You can come onto the panel.
Patreon.com. Search Mark Rogers TV. Sign up right there. I'll leave the link in the chat. All right. Been fun, guys. Appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. Thanks as always, Mark.
As always. Thank you.
Tim, throw up those V's, man. Throw up that V, because Friday we're going to see a USC victory over Utah, I believe. 50-28. Fight on, Tim.
Go Cats. The real Go Cats, baby.
Talking basketball, of course, at this point. All right. Yeah. You can join us on the Discord, and you get a lot of other benefits there at patreon.com. Search Mark Rogers TV. And with that, we are out. I've got all sorts of content coming your way, as we typically do. So if you look at the channel, you will see that we've got conference championship game previews rolling out. We will have even more, as well as I sized up USC versus TCU versus Ohio State and released that a couple hours ago in regards to a resume decision there, if it comes down to it. And there we go. Whole lot of other content. Tomorrow, we are live with Oklahoma, Michigan, Florida State, and Miami on those respective channels. And we hope to see you starting at 12:30 Eastern on the OU channel. We'll see you tomorrow.